Chapter 1304. Regarding this condition, Steward Joe had nothing to say. Anyway, he wasn't the one who wanted to come, and it wasn't up to him to decide whether to agree or not. Steward Joe just needed to do his job as a mouthpiece. Secondly, it's still the same. Life and death are not allowed. Wang Sheng proposed his second condition unhurriedly. In front of Steward Joe, he wasn't afraid to reveal his thoughts. If they want to die, then I'll grant them their wish. Steward Joe smiled along. No one knew what he was thinking in his heart, but he just noted it down. Thirdly, when I don't allow it, no one is allowed to advance. Whoever advances will die. Wang Sheng followed up with the third condition. If anyone doesn't listen, once the advancement triggers the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, believe me, I just need to send a maid who has never cultivated to go in. She will definitely use 10,000 ways to kill the guy who advanced. Steward Joe just nodded. Anyway, even if Steward Joe and the three great priests came over, they couldn't break the rules. They had just advanced to the 10th stage not long ago, so it was impossible for them to jump to the 11th stage. Since it had nothing to do with him, then what did the punishment of breaking the rules that Wang Sheng mentioned have to do with them? Moreover, Steward Joe absolutely believed that an unaffected person who had never cultivated could definitely kill a legendary peak expert who was advancing to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Every cultivator's advancement was actually a checkpoint of life and death. Didn't everyone have to be in the safest place to trigger the spiritual energy of heaven and earth? What Wang Sheng said was absolutely feasible to send an ordinary person to kill someone while the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was tempering their body. Triggering the advancement under the rhythm of the music in the theater would involve everyone in the rhythm of cultivation, unless they were in the same realm as the old Taoist. Even Uncle Li couldn't escape the fate of being dragged into cultivation. Wang Sheng was also warning everyone not to destroy the rhythm of the girl's cultivation. The last condition, there can be no less gold coins. Wang Sheng followed up with the last condition. The market price is 200,000 gold coins. I'll take anyone who comes over. Pay here, and they'll enter the theater. No credit. This was definitely in line with the reputation of Wang Sheng and Mei for money. Steward Joe almost laughed out loud. However, he didn't laugh in the end. He firmly remembered it and went back to pass on the message. When everyone heard Wang Sheng nod, their first reaction was to wonder if they had made a mistake. Could it be that Wang Sheng didn't use an extremely difficult song to scare everyone off so that he could cover up the fact that he was giving the beauties in the dream house a normal song to cultivate? Wang Sheng agreed, but the other parties were a little embarrassed. You're not going, right? They were the ones who took the initiative to mention it to the emperor and said that they wanted to go. However, even a peak legendary expert would not be able to withstand the rhythm of the music. What should he do? Not only do they have to pay a price of 200,000 gold coins per person, they could even cause serious injuries or even death to those who want to listen. This was terrible. However, this was the path that he had chosen, and he had to walk it to the end, even with tears in his eyes. The various parties had no choice but to choose a few cultivation methods that were special and fast-paced. They didn't dare to be real experts. At most, they were small characters in the 5th or 6th stage realm. They wanted them to hurry to the capital city. Just for this, they had to specially remind them to slow down on the road and delay for a few more days to arrive. As for the period before that, they could only find a few trustworthy ordinary people to listen to. When they thought of the Grandmaster level concert, the 200,000 gold coins per person ticket price could only be spent by a group of ordinary people. The various parties felt like a knife was being twisted in their hearts. However, words that were spoken were like water that had been spilled. Even if they clenched their teeth, they had to accept it. On the other hand, Wang Sheng seemed to be afraid that the various parties would not take out enough gold coins. When everyone was pinching their noses to choose, he actually came up with an idea and asked someone to send it to the mansions of the various parties. Wang Sheng suggested that it was best for each party not to choose combat cultivation methods for the time being. Instead, they should choose some auxiliary cultivation methods that were considered by the various parties before, or those that had a fast pace of cultivation, and let the people who cultivated these cultivation methods come. If they could find out which cultivation methods were suitable for the dance of the wasp, it would be beneficial for everyone. With this reminder, the various parties finally came to their senses. That's right. Now that the song was out, they only found one suitable cultivation method. If they could find more cultivation methods, wouldn't they be able to let everyone enjoy the benefits of fast cultivation? Wouldn't there be more benefits in a Grandmaster level concert? At this time, the various parties finally came to their senses. Wang Sheng had indeed made a new song, but because the tempo was too fast, other than the Yongshan Heart Sutra that they already knew, they simply did not know which cultivation method could be suitable for such a song. Wang Sheng himself did not want to use the lives of his guards to test out which cultivation method was suitable, so he gave them this idea. Of course, they could not rule out the possibility that Wang Sheng had already tested all of his guards and could not find more cultivation methods. After all, Wang Sheng's current power was too new. Apart from the gold coins, there was almost no foundation. At most, there were some common goods, which were far from the accumulation of the feudal vassals for hundreds of years. From his point of view, it did not seem to be a bad thing. Perhaps the various parties could find some useful cultivation methods among the many cultivation methods they had. If they could really adapt to this fast-paced music, wouldn't the speed of cultivation be crazy? As for the lives of these people, just like what Master Yu said, everyone had a strong knockout drug in their mouths. Once something went wrong, they would immediately knock themselves out. At least their lives would not be in danger. It was just a few days of rest. Let's do it. After the decision was made, the various parties immediately reported to their respective families and asked their families to send suitable people over. The Grandmasters in Wang Sheng's residence only had slightly more than a month's time to perform. If they were really delayed on the road, there would not be many opportunities. In less than half a day, the thoughts of all parties had turned over twice. Those who knew could not help but lament that benefits were really a good thing. As long as it suited their side, it was worth all kinds of support. Once it did not, it would be firmly suppressed without mercy. On the second day, when the Grandmasters performed, there were more than 10 people who were sent over from various families to practice various cultivation methods in the theater. These were found in a hurry in the capital city. Everyone had a knockout drug in their mouths to make themselves lose consciousness and stop listening to music at any time. What was surprising was that the imperial family also sent people over. However, the people they sent were old eunuch Shun and steward Zhou. Wang Sheng understood what they meant. They wanted to personally experience how terrifying the flying bees of the song was. Master Yu and the rest were not surprised. They continued to perform calmly, as usual. With a wave of the baton, a few soothing tunes were played, and the flying bees of the song became wild again. Chapter 1305. Wang Sheng and Mei were no longer bothered by this level of music. After listening to it for so many days, they were used to resisting it, and it was effortless. Rosa and the other ladies still enjoyed listening to it. In actual fact, Rosa was no longer in the second stage realm. She had made use of the girl's advancement to advance to the third stage realm. The Dance of the Wasps was simply too valiant. It was so valiant that Rosa was about to advance again after a few days of advancement. If it wasn't for Wang Sheng's strong request to suppress it until the ladies advanced again, she might have to do it again. No matter what, this cultivation speed was absolutely too fast. Even if it was Rosa's third time cultivating again, it was still the same. Wang Sheng would never allow such a thing to happen, so no matter how anxious Rosa was, it wouldn't work. Old eunuch Shun and steward Zhou didn't seem to be used to it initially, and the sudden increase in speed shocked them. However, the 10th-stage realm was still the 10th-stage realm. She relied on her strong cultivation to suppress the rioting of her acupuncture points and forcefully endured the first ensemble of the Dance of the Wasps. One ensemble lasted for a few minutes, and it was definitely enough for the spiritual qi in her body to circulate quickly for several weekdays. No matter how overbearing old eunuch Shun and steward Zhou were, they almost lost control after listening to it once. Luckily, After the ensemble was completed, it was immediately changed to a certain grandmaster's solo on a certain musical instrument, which gave the two great reverends a chance to catch their breath. Finally, they managed to stabilize the spiritual chi by relying on the slightly weaker impact. Only then did the two of them suck in a breath of cold air and look at each other in dismay. Even the two of them had to restrain at least 50% of their spiritual chi to be able to withstand it. How did the beauties in the dream workshop manage to withstand it? They could see the beauties' condition when they turned their heads. They looked much more comfortable in one look, and one could tell that they were really immersed in it. It made one sigh that sometimes there were merits to cultivating, even if it wasn't a combat cultivation method. Looking at the people who were sent over, there were more than 70 people who cultivated non-combat techniques, and more than 50 of them were unconscious. After receiving strict warnings from Wang Sheng's side and the main family's side, once they realized something was wrong, they decisively took the knockout drug. It seemed that these people were in good condition. Their auras were slightly affected, but this effect would disappear in a few days at most. The dozen or so that were born were rather fortunate. It had to be said that the various feudal vassals had accumulated over hundreds of years. Even though it was only a batch of non-combatants that had been urgently gathered from the capital, there were still a dozen or so people among them who could withstand the rhythm of flying wild bees. Of course, the premise was that they firmly remembered the previous instructions and controlled their spiritual energy to 1/10, not daring to use more than that. After a series of solos, there was another ensemble. At this point, among the dozen people who were still conscious, other than old eunuch Shun and steward Zhou, there was only one person who could still hold on. Even that person could only hold on for an hour. In the end, the last person could not hold on any longer. Only the two great consecrators were left. In the end, including the two great consecrators, the people sent by the emperor and the feudal vassals were all carried out. However, the people from the feudal vassals had really taken the knockout drug and fainted, while the two great consecrators had received a hint from Wang Sheng and pretended to be unconscious. The two old and cunning fellows were also happy to hide their strength. They just lay there and allowed a few young eunuchs to carefully carry them to the carriage and bring them back to the palace. The effect of this concert was great. At least all parties realized that there would not necessarily be serious casualties. As long as one was not greedy, cherished one's life, and immediately took the knockout drug when they realized something was wrong, there would not be serious injuries. Especially the dozen or so people who cultivated techniques, they could rely on the characteristics of the techniques to hold on for a very long time. Although there were no people who could hold on until the end, even if they could only hold on for half of the time, those people still benefited a lot. It was not that easy to advance in non-combat techniques, but this time they had only listened to the flying wild bees for less than an hour, and the effect was almost equivalent to 2 to 3 months of normal cultivation. It was simply a miracle that the Grandmaster level concert brought an increase in the speed of their cultivation. The major families acted as if they had obtained a treasure. They immediately memorized all the techniques practiced by those who did not pass the first round, and then carefully studied the characteristics. They dug out similar techniques from the family's ancient books and quickly sent people over. Another huge gain was that the various leaders in the capital realized that listening to a concert might not really cause a big problem. This was not like the previous few masters, who would directly die if they were below the legendary realm. As long as everyone was clear-headed, nothing would happen. This also made the various leaders in the capital itch. It was said that the new song Flying Wild Bees was so powerful and dangerous, but they could only infer the specifics from the results of others who had tried it. If they could really take the knockout drug in time, it was not impossible to escape unscathed. It was such a great opportunity, so they had to experience it, right? Maybe their own cultivation techniques could adapt to that rhythm. After that, there were no serious casualties for 3 consecutive days. The one who was the most seriously injured was a guy who was not convinced and wanted to hold on for a while longer. In the end, when he found that his acupuncture points were beating uncontrollably, he decisively took the knockout drug. In the end, he vomited blood and suffered internal injuries. He needed to recuperate for more than 2 months. He was the only one who was seriously injured, and there was no one else. After old eunuch Shun and steward Zhou saw it once, steward Li also took turns to listen to it. The three priests were quite surprised. This flight of the wasps seemed to be tailor-made for them. If it weren't for the fact that they were afraid of revealing their cultivation levels, the three of them would have followed Rose and the other girls to listen to it once a day. After a few days of observation, the various leaders in the capital finally realized that it was really not a big deal as long as they did not force themselves. They could not help but personally rush to Duke Chongqing's residence and personally listen to the Grandmaster's concert. After a night, the various leaders who had been carried back woke up and were all full of praise. It was indeed worthy of its reputation. How many people could be involuntarily controlled by a song? It was also because these grandmasters did not have the intention to harm people. If they really wanted to fight, as long as they played a song, how many people would be able to get close to them? After personally experiencing the power of this song and praising it, the various leaders began to ponder. If this song could only speed up the cultivation of non-combat techniques, then what was the purpose of Wang Sheng spending so much money to invite the grandmasters to play it every day for a month for the beauties of the Dream Workshop? Chapter 1306. If it was given to combat personnel, it would definitely be to improve their cultivation. However, what was the point of giving it to these beauties who had no combat ability? Could it be to make them more radiant, more beautiful and enchanting, and then give them away as gifts? This was obviously impossible. If Wang Sheng wanted to give gifts, he would have given them away long ago. Why would he spend so much effort to cultivate them? Although there were many people in this world who liked beautiful women, if one were to think that a few beautiful women would be able to change the minds of the great feudal vassals with pillow talk, wouldn't that be looking down on the great feudal vassals too much? Could it be to cultivate combat strength? As soon as this thought flashed through everyone's mind, they immediately shook their heads. What a joke! The Triumph Palace's Yongshun mantra, other than to help the cultivators maintain their beauty, what other use could it have? It was not only Wang Sheng who had obtained the beauties of the Triumph Palace. Over the years, the great families had bought countless beauties of the Triumph Palace. These beauties were really pleasing to the eye if they were used as vases. If a group of delicate beauties were to fight, not to mention the spoiling scene, it was hard to say whether their delicate bodies, which were comparable to eggshells, would be able to withstand 2 punches from any expert. However, all parties also tightened their guard. After all, many of these people who cultivated the Yongshun mantra used to be escorted by beautiful women, and they also had combat strength. Who knew if cultivating the Yongshun mantra in this situation would really have no combat strength? There had never been such a situation before. In short, it was necessary to be careful, but there was no need to think of them as terrifying experts. Perhaps the beauties that Wang Sheng had spent a lot of money to cultivate now. When Wang Sheng was liquidated, these beauties would become the property of all parties to be divided. They couldn't spoil the fun like burning a lute and boiling a crane. Because all parties discovered that there was a group of non-combat techniques that could keep up with the rhythm of the great Grandmaster's dance. This led to a great increase in the enthusiasm of all parties. They quickly searched for a group of people who also cultivated various non-combat techniques to experiment. Since it was a non-combat technique, it meant that the combat personnel could cultivate at the same time without affecting their own main technique. If they really found a suitable cultivation technique, the combatants could cultivate one more auxiliary cultivation technique and then use the great Grandmaster's concert to rapidly increase their cultivation. Where else could they find such a good thing? Therefore, no matter how big the initial investment was, it was worth it. Even some small sacrifices were worth it. As a matter of fact, the music grandmasters, who had never been in contact with the major vassals and had never given them any face, had spent the past few days seeking advice from the various leaders during the day. They wanted to discuss with them whether they could purchase one or several non-combat techniques that had been passed down in their clans. The goal of the great grandmasters was very clear. They wanted one of the techniques that could adapt to the rhythm of the flying bees. They wanted it to be a compulsory technique for the musicians to practice in the future. It was only then that everyone realized that the martial arts techniques practiced by the martial grandmasters were not suitable for the dance of the wasp. The reason why they were able to perform was that their sense of music had really reached the pinnacle. Secondly, when they were performing, they never dared to use their full spiritual chi. At most, they only used 1/3 of the spiritual chi in their bodies. Moreover, they had to immediately switch to a solo after performing an ensemble. Otherwise, no one would be able to withstand a series of ensemble performances. One could imagine how powerful the Dance of the Wasp was. The great grandmasters wanted a cultivation technique. Should they give it to them? Was there even a need to ask this question? The leaders of the various clans in the capital did not need to consult their respective masters. They themselves nodded on the spot. The cultivation technique was immediately found in their clan's ancient records and sent to the capital in a few days. Compared to the favor of a musical instrument great grandmaster, a non-combat auxiliary cultivation technique that was not very important to the clans was not even worth mentioning. Not to mention one cultivation technique, even if there were 8 or 10. So what? The great grandmasters had said that in order to repay the favor of this cultivation technique, they were willing to go to the territories of the major vassals after the matter with Duke Chongqing's residence was settled. They would especially perform once for each of the vassals who had taken out the cultivation technique as a token of gratitude. What was the market price for a performance by a great grandmaster? Seats for 1,000 people were sold for 200,000 gold coins each. That was 200 million gold coins for one performance. What kind of cultivation technique could not be bought with 200 million gold coins? But could 200 million gold coins be used to invite a great grandmaster's band to perform for them? Was there a need to weigh the pros and cons? Almost all the clans used the fastest speed to send over the cultivation techniques from their clans. Moreover, they sent several types at once for the great grandmasters to choose from. They would choose the most suitable cultivation technique and then let the people in the sect cultivate it. No matter how much they experimented on which cultivation technique was suitable, how could they understand it better than the great grandmasters who played every day? Just as people came and went, the beauties of the dream workshop cultivated every day, and the great grandmasters played every day. A month passed in the blink of an eye. More than 30 days had passed before people could feel anything. According to the usual pattern, today was the day when all the clans sent people to Duke Chongqing's residence, paid money, and listened to the great grandmaster's performance before going home to sum up. However, before they could bring people to Duke Chongqing's residence today, they had already sent news over. Today, they were allowed to advance to the next level. Moreover, they would be playing the usual soothing music. If the clans were willing, they could send people over. Each clan could not have more than 60 people. Was there such a good thing? Each clan in the capital had a sufficient number of experts waiting to advance to the next level. They were all waiting for the day when they could make a breakthrough at that high-level concert. Who would miss a great grandmaster's performance? However, the clans had a trace of doubt. Previously, Wang Sheng would rather die than let anyone advance during a performance. Why was he acting so strangely today? Could it be that those beauties had reached the point of advancing, so they were going to advance collectively today? That's right. The person Wang Sheng sent to inform the clans readily admitted to this point. He then admitted, the more people advance, the more heaven and earth spiritual chi they will bring, and the longer the spiritual chi will refine their bodies. The bigger the spiritual chi ball, the more powerful it will be, and the more benefits it will bring. Therefore, the Duke hopes to send more experts who are about to advance. An open scheme. However, the clans did not mind at all. Instead, they happily picked the best experts and sent them over. Although the higher the cultivation of the experts who advanced, the more benefits it would bring to the beauties of a dream workshop. Then again, the bigger the spiritual chi ball, the more benefits it would bring to their own people. Only a fool would not do something that was mutually beneficial. After today, presumably, Wang Sheng's plan would be exposed, right? How could the clans miss such a moment? He personally led a team over. Chapter 1307. The 1,200-seat theater was packed to the brim. Not only did the officials from the feudal vassals come, but even the emperor came to join in the fun. He came to Duke Chongqing's mansion with the empress and the three great consecrators. Naturally, the theater was filled to the brim with people from all parties. There was a group of people who couldn't get in because there were no seats, so they could only be guards outside. There were too many people, so the emperor didn't talk much with Wang Sheng and Mei Er. The performance began. Everyone calmed down and focused their attention on the performance itself. It had to be said that after more than a month of practicing the dazzling song Flight of the Wasps, the great masters all looked relaxed and comfortable when playing these ordinary songs. Their control of spiritual qi had improved many times compared to more than a month ago. They could easily grasp the most comfortable degree of each song. In particular, Master Yu also found in this round of performance that not every song needed to be performed with all their strength. After performing for a few days in a row, it was inevitable that people would be carried out. On the contrary, there were 2 or 3 people who didn't participate in each song. It wouldn't affect the overall effect of the song, nor would everyone be exhausted. It was beneficial for the performers and the audience. Speaking of which, Master Yu and the others had to thank Wang Sheng. If it weren't for Wang Sheng's Flight of the Wasps, that pushed everyone to the limit and made everyone feel that they were indispensable in the band, everyone would try their best to perform every time they played. It was obvious that they were overexerting themselves. Now, everyone had learned how to grasp it just right. The songs that everyone was familiar with now had a different kind of exquisite feeling when they listened to them again. They felt that the weight, urgency, strength, weakness, and speed of the songs were really not more or less. It was exquisite beyond compare. Old Taoist Ling Su was the first to notice something wrong. He was surprised. Then he closed his eyes and began to enjoy the music. For more than a month, he had been listening to a few songs that women like to listen to, plus the dance of the wild bees. He had not changed them in the middle. The old Taoist could no longer hear the subtle changes in those songs every day. However, these songs that he had not heard for a few months were performed again, and it was a different feeling. The old Taoist was immediately satisfied, and he did not want to open his eyes. The emperor and the empress also had the ability to appreciate music. They felt different at the beginning of the concert. Anyway, their cultivation wouldn't improve in a short time. So they just came to enjoy the music and enjoy the massage of the big spiritual energy. Compared to them, the others did not feel much better. Their attention was not on the performance itself, but on the process of advancing with the help of the rhythm of the music. Everyone was cultivating with the rhythm of the music. Who cared about how much the great master's skills had improved? When it came to the second song, some people already couldn't help but advance. Then there was a chain reaction. A series of masters joined in. Before the third song was finished, a huge spiritual energy mass had formed above the grand theater, enveloping the whole theater. The women didn't follow the crowd. It wasn't until the fourth song was finished that they entered the process of advancing. This time, there were more than 600 of them, more than double the number of masters who had just advanced. The scale of the spiritual energy mass became larger and larger. The spiritual energy of the whole capital seemed to be drawn out and gathered in this area. At this point, everyone in the grand theater was immersed in cultivation. It didn't matter whether they advanced or not. Those who advanced seized the time to enjoy the process of the spiritual energy tempering their bodies. Those who didn't advance also took the opportunity to enjoy the big spiritual energy mass washing their bodies to consolidate their cultivation. No one cared about anything else. Even the great masters who were performing were no exception. Other than the first 5 songs, 2 or 3 people would take a break after each song. They took turns to cultivate. At the same time, they took the opportunity to enjoy the nourishment of the big spiritual energy mass when they didn't need to perform. It seemed that the large-scale advancement this time was no different from usual. However, only Wang Sheng, the old Taoist, and the 3 great priests could feel that the reality was very different. It seemed that the great masters had experienced more than a month of performance and had made another breakthrough in their performance skills. The women from the Dream Workshop were also breaking through. However, in their eyes, there was something different now. As for the others, they were still the same, but no one paid them any attention. After 4 days and 4 nights, the spiritual energy tempering time still exceeded everyone's expectations. This was thanks to an expert from the kingdom of Song who had been in the 8th stage for 13 years. When he advanced today, he directly broke through to the late stage of the legendary realm. He was only a little bit weaker than Wang Sheng back then. He single-handedly led the spiritual energy tempering time to extend to 4 days and 4 nights. It could be said that everyone, including Wang Sheng, the old Taoist, the emperor, the empress, and the 3 great priests, benefited from this expert from the Song family. In the entire performance, they were the only ones who didn't advance. Even the leaders of each family took this opportunity to enter the legendary realm. According to common sense, the moment the spiritual energy mass dissipated, Master Yu and the others should have been exhausted and carried out of the stage amidst the grateful applause of the audience. However, it was different this time. None of the great masters stood on the stage. Facing the applause of the audience, they all stood on their own and bowed to the audience. After the great masters left, the audience left one by one according to the order of their seats. However, before leaving, everyone felt a strong aura like that of an unsheathed sharp sword. Most of the people here had just advanced and could not control their aura. It was normal to feel a sense of aggressiveness. However, the problem was that this aura was too strong, too concentrated, and too unfamiliar. Everyone's eyes were attracted by this strong sense of aggressiveness and looked over. However, when they looked over, they only saw a group of beautiful women competing with each other. There was nothing else. Could it be that there was an expert hidden among these beautiful women? What kind of expert would have such a strong aura? However, when they carefully probed with the aura again, they discovered that this strong sense of aggressiveness was actually emitted by the group of beautiful women who had no combat power in their eyes. It was not just 1 or 2, but more than 600 of them, all of them included. Just this sense of aggressiveness alone made everyone understand one thing, and that was that these beautiful women, who they had only seen as vases in the past, had actually become peerless experts. Moreover, all of them were peerless experts of the legendary realm. Their cultivation was the same, and their auras were the same. They were so unified that it was somewhat frightening. How is this possible? Chapter 1308. Just now, they were still immersed in the joy of advancing to the legendary realm. After discovering this, they suddenly felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar, and their bodies turned cold. Previously, all parties were still guessing why Wang Sheng paid such a big price to improve the cultivation of these beauties. Now that they had advanced to the legendary realm in front of everyone, and those delicate flower vases had transformed into heroic legendary realm experts, everyone understood. The Yongshan cultivation method definitely had a characteristic that was, it could only maintain one's beauty for those below the legendary realm. At first, everyone was dismissive of this cultivation method. In addition to being a flower vase to entertain people, there was no other good point, and they could only rely on men's favor to live for a lifetime. However, after practicing this cultivation method, there would be no children, and there was no way for a mother to rely on her son. In the end, they could only end up with a bleak ending. The only use of these female disciples who practiced the Yongchun cultivation method was probably to raise a lot of gold coins for the Triumph Palace in the past. But now, it seemed that the amount was simply a joke. Even now, the consumption for everyone to use it to improve their cultivation was more than that amount. All of a sudden, these women who could only be used as playthings completed a qualitative change in their cultivation in front of everyone. From a delicate woman, they had become legendary realm experts who could easily crush those below the legendary realm. This matter felt so surreal no matter how they thought about it. However, this happened in front of everyone's eyes. There might be a problem with the aura of one person, but it was impossible to sense the aura of a group of people, right? Even if everyone didn't believe what they saw and didn't believe in the aura they sensed, they had to believe the results of Wang Sheng's actions, right? Chongsheng Duke's mansion could be said to be the weakest, shortest, and shallowest duke force. All parties could tolerate it until now. One was because of the support of the emperor and Lao Jun, and the other was that all parties were waiting to dig out all the value of Wang Sheng and then counterattack. But overnight, there were more than 600 legendary realm experts in Changsheng Duke's mansion, and they were all powerful legendary realm experts. This change of situation scared many people. Right now, the strongest nation, the Song Nation, has many legendary experts. However, on the surface, there are only about 600 to 700 of them. The nations of the other 8 great feudal vassals had fought each other all these years. Even including their hidden strength, they were only slightly more than this number. And then Duke Changsheng's mansion caught up to the end of the 8 feudal vassals in an instant. Ordinary small feudal vassals did not dare to be mentioned in the same breath as Duke Changsheng's residence. The most frightening thing was that Changsheng Duke's mansion not only had so many experts, but also this terrifying financial resources that made people despair. With the two added together, as long as Duke Changsheng's residence did not take the initiative to provoke the whole world, then it could be said that among the 8 great feudal vassals, there would be one more seat, and there would be 9 great feudal vassals. Don't forget, the land of Thousand Despair was Duke Changsheng's fief. Duke Changsheng was definitely a duke with a title, a fief, and power. Wang Sheng showed off his muscles in front of the emperor and all the officials in the capital. What was even more maddening was that these beautiful female experts were able to advance for such a long time because of the experts from the various feudal vassals. How ironic was that? All parties were shocked and suddenly did not know what to do. A group of people left Duke Changsheng's mansion like wooden people and returned to their respective residences. Those officials seemed to have gone crazy. They immediately began to send messages by messenger bird and hurriedly sent this important news back to the various countries. When the emperor left, he did not say anything to Wang Sheng. He just sighed and patted him on the shoulder. "They are Mei Er's guards." Wang Sheng just smiled and said one more sentence, but it made the emperor's eyes light up. Then he looked at Wang Sheng meaningfully and left with the empress under the protection of the 3 great masters. From beginning to end, the 3 great masters only gave Wang Sheng an inexplicable look when they finally left and did not say a word. Duke Changsheng's mansion was calm and peaceful. Wang Sheng did what he should do, and the women also began to consolidate their cultivation after a simple rest. Nothing changed, but the whole capital, the whole world, was stirred up by the performance of Duke Changsheng's mansion this time. Countless people could not eat and sleep well. God knows how many people in the capital had designs on the beauties of Dream House. They were all thinking of the day when Wang Sheng could no longer protect them. They would snatch a beauty back to enjoy. But when the news of the beauties advancing to the legendary realm came out, all the guys who had designs on them were all dumbfounded. A beautiful woman without combat power could naturally be wantonly humiliated and played with in any way they wanted. But who would dare to do that to a legendary realm expert? Did they not want their heads anymore? As soon as the news came out, it was unknown how many old masters of noble families frantically told their servants not to say a word of blasphemy to the beauties of Dream House in the future. Usually, they could use a kind of lewd and evil words to talk about a few beautiful vases, but to talk about more than 600 real legendary realm experts was rushing to their deaths. When many senior officials in the capital heard the news, they were so scared that their legs turned to jelly, because they had said similar words to their wives and family members, and they also knew that their wives and family members had talked about it when they were chatting with their coaches. Now that they thought about it, if those coaches brought up the words of the past, what would happen to them? The capital couldn't make a move? That was a restriction for those small figures. If the emperor wanted to kill someone, see if he could do it. If Wang Sheng wanted to kill someone, see if he could do it. For a moment, those who had dirty thoughts almost wanted to rush to Duke Changsheng's mansion to beg for forgiveness. Also unable to sleep at night were the major feudal vassals who received the news from the capital. In the middle of the night, the messenger birds sent messages, and the patriarchs urgently called the important ministers and elders to discuss in their respective palaces. The lights did not go out for the whole night. Suddenly, there were more than 600 real legendary realm experts. How could this be a small variable? It was simply a complete reversal. Whoever could fall asleep was the ignorant and incompetent Zhu Xiaodong. Throughout the whole night, it seemed that only the people of Duke Chongqing's mansion had a good sleep. The next day, the people of Duke Chongqing's mansion, including the employees of several industries under their name, seemed to speak with much more confidence. Soon after, all parties received another piece of news. The complete core area of the Ground of Despair had been put up for sale at Qianxingyuan and could be purchased at any time. Chapter 1309. The whole world was waiting for Wang Sheng's complete map of the core region of the Land of Despair. Of course, the Xia family and the Shi family were the exceptions. They already had the complete map. One of them had prepared it a year in advance, while the other had prepared it months in advance. The other families were already envious of it, but none of them dared to act rashly without the complete map. It wasn't that they didn't send experts in. It was just that once they entered the core inner circle, if they didn't have a map, a super monster would be released at every turn. Then, it would alarm the monsters within a radius of more than 10 miles, and they would be besieged. It was unknown how many peak legendary experts had died inside. As more and more people died, all the parties finally realized that without Wang Sheng's map, they might not even be able to find a safe way out. Under such circumstances, all the parties stopped sending people to their deaths and waited for the map to appear. 50 million gold coins for one map. Wang Sheng still showed his greedy nature and didn't disappoint anyone at all. All the parties were already prepared. As soon as they heard the news, they immediately brought their gold notes to buy a map. They didn't have to worry about the authenticity of the map, since it was sold by Qianxingyuan. With Wang Sheng's reputation, there wouldn't be any problems. After getting the map, the manager in the capital immediately sent experts to deliver it to the camps of the various families in the Land of Despair overnight. All the feudal vassals had already prepared teams of experts, and once the map arrived, they would set off immediately after studying it. The periphery of the core region of the Land of Despair, which was the area that Wang Sheng had previously drawn on the map, had basically been explored. It had to be said that having a map and not having a map were two completely different things. Some of the formations affected each other, and some of the terrain obscured each other. Looking from afar and looking from close up were two completely different things, especially those ferocious demonic beasts. The experts who went in didn't have sharp senses like Wang Sheng, nor did they have a strong cultivation like old Taoist Ling Su. By the time they sensed the demonic beasts, a battle would already be inevitable. Any small demonic beast in the core region of the Land of Despair could kill a peak of the legendary realm on its own. With a complete map, at least some areas would have demonic beasts, and some areas would be too narrow to have them. They would be able to make judgments based on the map in advance. Just this alone would reduce the danger for all parties by at least 80%. In addition, Wang Sheng's professional map-making techniques, coupled with the positioning techniques that were circulated later, allowed the person holding the map to quickly locate his position on the map. The accuracy would not exceed 100 meters. For those who wanted to dig out the core secrets of the Ground of Despair, was there anything more indispensable than a professional and accurate map? Within half a day, the map was sold for 1 billion gold coins. Not only did the 8 great vassals buy the map, but many other vassals were also unwilling to be excluded by the 8 great vassals and bought their own maps. At the very least, Wang Sheng knew that the worry-free city, the godly might prison, and the imperial treasury also bought one for some unknown reason. There are also a few minor dukes. If it was in the past, an income of 1 billion yuan in half a day would make the jaws of everyone in the capital break. But now, everyone looked at it calmly. Wasn't it just 1 billion gold coins for half a day? What was this? When Li Jinfang's real income was at its peak, it was several times more than this. Was everyone surprised? Didn't they live their lives as they should? Countless pairs of eyes in the capital were staring at Chongqing Duke's residence and Wang Sheng's actions. As long as Wang Sheng stayed in the capital, no one would take any action. They tacitly agreed that Wang Sheng would be trapped in the capital, eating and waiting to die. But once Wang Sheng left the capital, he would probably be attacked crazily. No matter which vassal it was, they would have to settle the score with Wang Sheng for offending their families in the past. Of course, on the surface, they could tolerate Wang Sheng's stay in the capital because they had promised the emperor not to use force in the capital. But secretly, they were afraid of the more than 600 legendary masters in Chongqing Duke's residence. If they really took action regardless of everything, they would not only have to deal with Chongqing Duke's residence, but also the royal family and the Temple of Laojun, compared to settling the score with Wang Sheng. The most important thing for all parties now was to quickly organize experts to enter the core of the Ground of Despair. Otherwise, if they continued to delay, the Xia family and the Shi family would really succeed. The secret attacks from all parties outside came to an abrupt stop, as if a conductor had suddenly drawn a stop sign in the air. Even the Xia family, which had always been attacked by all parties, suddenly stopped. But sadly, the 4 cities occupied by the barbarian experts of Shanyue Kingdom were still firmly under the control of the barbarian experts. The focus of the fight was no longer on the territories of the vassals, but on the core of the Ground of Despair. Countless experts from all the clans had been cultivating crazily recently, waiting to enter the core of the Ground of Despair at any time to help. Countless people were dumbfounded as they looked at the movement that had swept across the world. After the initial shock, they slowly began to find out the cause of all this. When they found out that it was caused by Wang Sheng's map, those ordinary people who did not know the key to this matter were full of admiration for Chongqing Duke's move, which was like the real order of the emperor. "Old master, are you just going to watch them like this?" Mayor knew what Wang Sheng was thinking, and she was also aware of Wang Sheng's arrangements. But now, when she saw Wang Sheng leisurely staying in the residence every day, as if he had nothing to do, she could not help but feel a little unwilling. The old master that she liked was a man of indomitable spirit, and not a cowardly little man in the face of such a situation. Sometimes, women were so contradictory. On one hand, they hoped that their lovers would be fighting and breaking through enemy lines, but on the other hand, they wanted them to have enough time to accompany them. But once they spent too much time with each other, they were afraid that the man would lose his ambition and waste his life. There's no hurry. Right now, the core of the Ground of Despair will be littered with corpses for a period of time. Wang Sheng's reply made Mei very satisfied. At least Wang Sheng did not really become the state that she did not want to see the most. "I will wait until they have fought their own way to a balance. Then I will enter." Mayer could completely imagine the scene. The core of the Ground of Despair had a circumference of no less than 300 miles. Thousands of experts had entered at once, and all of them had to go within 100 miles of the core. One could imagine how lively it would be. Who would be willing to let the secret of the Ground of Despair be dug out and taken away by other clans? After entering, the most likely thing that these experts would do was to find the troops of the Xia family and the Gan family, and then gang up on them. No matter what they had discovered inside, they would kill them first and snatch the treasure away. As for who would own the treasure after snatching it, that was another question. Chapter 13:10. In fact, Wang Sheng was not the only one who could guess what was going to happen. Even the other families were clear about it. Were they willing to let their own masters die? The problem was that this was simply an irreconcilable contradiction. In the end, it was all about interests. No family would be willing to give up the interests that they had already obtained. Not only that, if other families got it, they would do everything they could to snatch it. Among them, there was no distinction between Tang, Song, Dai, Shiqiu, or Xia, Feng, and Gan. Each family was an independent individual. Perhaps they would be divided into these 2 groups in the fight for status and the right to speak. But when it came to the secrets of the Place of Thousand Despair, each family was an individual with interests. Even the interests of other families had to be snatched by all means, not to mention giving up their own interests so easily. So on this issue, it was a dead end. There was no such thing as working together, and there was no such thing as sharing secrets. Perhaps in the beginning, There would be a few families forming an alliance, trying to strengthen their own strength to compete for it. But once the things were in their hands, it meant the end of the alliance, and it was time for a big fight. Every alliance that was formed during this period of time was fragile and could be broken at any time if they didn't leave the core of the Thousand Despair grounds. In a situation where everyone had their own ulterior motives, true cooperation would be far away in the foreseeable future. Wang Sheng knew this, the emperor knew it, the Grand Abbey Dean knew it, the major feudal lords knew it, and even the godly might prison of Worry-Free City knew it. Only God knew what they wanted to do with the map. Since the construction of the first base of the imperial treasury began, the past few years had been enough for the major families to tame a group of messenger birds that were slightly larger than the birds of prey and could safely enter and exit the place of Thousand Despair. Of course, the imperial treasure house was one step ahead, and they had also made a solid profit from this. LV Wunho's eyes for business opportunities. If it were not for Wang Sheng's knowledge beyond this world, he might not be able to compare to LV Wunho. Every day, messenger birds would fly back and forth in the land of Thousand Extremities, and the patriarchs and higher-ups of the various large families would keep abreast of the current situation in the heart of the land of Thousand Extremities. However, this situation didn't last for too long, because the messenger birds usually flew around the grounds of Thousand Extremities. Once they entered the core of the grounds of Thousand Extremities, they would be faced with a harsh environment and ferocious demonic beasts. In just a few days, more than half of the messenger birds that the various clans had painstakingly nurtured had been lost. This time, the families no longer dared to use messenger birds easily. They only made an agreement with the core disciples of the ground of Thousand Despair that they would not use messenger birds unless it was a matter of life and death or important news. As a result, everyone instantly returned to their original state of being blind. No one knew what was going on inside. They didn't know how many of their own people had died, and they didn't know if their own disciples had discovered something. The higher-ups waited anxiously every day, but there was nothing they could do. The atmosphere in the capital looked very peaceful. There were songs and dances, and the lights on the Qinhuai River almost never went out. The whole world was strangely quiet. This lasted for more than a month, but no more news came out. The great grandmasters received dozens of cultivation methods and began to fulfill their promises. They took turns to perform in the capitals of the various clans. This was a rare event that the feudal lords attached great importance to, apart from the grounds of Thousand Extremities. Everywhere they went, they were treated like their ancestors. No one came to disturb Wang Sheng. During this period, the Dream Workshop reopened and continued to operate. The attitude of the women seemed to be the same as before, and nothing had changed. However, whether it was the noble women or the other customers, their attitude towards them had changed slightly. Although the change seemed very inconspicuous, how could they, who were in the legendary realm, not notice it? Wang Sheng didn't stay idle. During this period, he and a group of great grandmasters from the Pavilion of Delicacy had forged many scattered parts. The great grandmasters didn't know what these things were used for. They just built them precisely according to Wang Sheng's requirements and measurements. Mayer and Rosa both knew what Wang Sheng was preparing, but they didn't stop him. Instead, they used the financial resources of Liz Hen Lane to find all kinds of things for Wang Sheng. No matter what Wang Sheng needed, they would do everything they could to satisfy him. It was undeniable that when one's financial resources reached a level that surpassed that of a country, some things would become very simple. Many things that ordinary masters might not be able to find in their entire lives were easily delivered to Duke Chongqing's mansion in the face of an irresistible amount of wealth. In fact, they had been preparing for this since a year ago. Up until now, Wang Sheng had enough supplies and various weapons and equipment for Wang Sheng to live alone in the grounds of Thousand Extremities for 2 years. Old Taoist, when will you be done? Wang Sheng had already prepared everything. When he invited the old Taoist for a drink, he calmly asked, when are you ready to upgrade again? 2 or 3 more months, the old Taoist replied calmly. During this period, the old Taoist didn't practice in seclusion every day. However, after more than a month of flying wasps and the enlightenment he had gained on the sea, the old Taoist had successfully seen the direction ahead. When he replied, his tone was very firm. "Then you can go to the grounds of thousand extremities to find me after you've arranged everything." Wang Sheng said to the old Taoist, "I'm going to go in for a while. I reckon that by the time you've arranged everything, the fight inside will be almost over. When that time comes, let's go and take a look at the sword." That sword was naturally the one that had been found together with the broken golden hairpin in the Gone family's peerless treasures. Once the aura on the sword was activated, it would probably cause a huge commotion. "Aren't you afraid of incurring public anger?" The old Taoist frowned and asked in confusion. There were so many experts from the big families inside. Once Wang Sheng released that aura, it was hard to imagine what would happen to those experts. If the old Taoist himself couldn't resist that aura, how many experts from the big families would die in that environment? "I'm just helping them out." Wang Sheng laughed. "If they were to dig there, how long would it take?" The old Taoist looked at Wang Sheng's determined eyes and knew that he had made up his mind. He didn't say anything else and just nodded. "I'll go back and make the arrangements." After sending off the old Taoist, Wang Sheng began to face Mei and Rosa. In the current situation, the two women had already guessed what they were going to face. Knowing that Wang Sheng was about to leave and face all the enemies in the world, the two women endured the pain and worry of parting and still gave Wang Sheng their most beautiful smiles at the door of the mansion. "I'm leaving." Wang Sheng also smiled at the two women and only said a few words before turning around and leaving the mansion. Outside the Changsheng Duke mansion, countless pairs of eyes stared at Wang Sheng's figure as he walked out of the Changsheng Duke mansion, along the main road, and out of the capital. Chapter 13:11. Wang Sheng walked at an unhurried pace, but in the eyes of many, it was thrilling. It was as though something earth-shattering would happen the moment he left Duke Changsheng's residence. In Duke Changsheng's residence, Mei and Rosa watched Wang Sheng's back disappear from their sight and return to the hall silently. Mei waved her hand. In less than 2 minutes, two people who looked like unruly killers appeared in front of Mei. One of them played with a red square plate from time to time. If Wang Sheng was here, he would be able to tell that it was the identity plate of Worry-Free City. As for the other one, he did not have any identity. However, there is no one else who could stand together with the killers of Worry-Free City except for the Godly Might prison. Follow the Duke and see who dares to make things difficult for him. Mei spoke very softly, and there was no emotion in her tone. As long as there is someone who dares to make things difficult for the Duke, it will be counted as one. Your two families will place an order together. Whoever brings his head here will be paid 5 times the normal price. The two killers looked at each other and revealed an unconvinced expression. Then, they bowed to Mei and left without saying a word. Wang Sheng had slowly walked to the outer city. Now that there were no city walls in the capital city, it was hard to say whether it was inside or outside the city. Even if it was outside the moat of the original outer city, which should be considered outside the city, it was now the original residential area of the capital city. Therefore, it was now customary to leave the residential area and go to an uninhabited road outside to be considered to have left the capital city. This was also a benefit that the emperor had fought for the original residents of the capital city. Otherwise, if the capital city was not allowed to use force and only included the original inner and outer city, wouldn't the safety of the residents who had moved out be not guaranteed? The other parties would not fight with the emperor over the scope of this area. It was nothing more than expanding the area by 10 miles. How big of a deal was it? Not too far ahead was the edge of the residential area. Once they left this area, they would be considered to have left the capital. Then, the rule of not fighting within the capital would become invalid. Wang Sheng had already seen it. Not far in front of him, there was a seemingly bored guy sitting under a tree by the roadside. He was holding a knife in his hand and throwing it around. There was a strange smile on his face as he looked in the direction Wang Sheng was coming from. On the other side of the road, there was also a person holding a long knife who was constantly chopping the grass on the side of the road. Continuing forward, there seemed to be another road. It was less than 50 meters away, and there were at least 6 people waiting on both sides of the road. Seeing this, Wang Sheng's face revealed a mocking smile. Were they that impatient? He had just left Changsheng Duke's mansion and had yet to leave the capital city, but he had already put on such an act for him to see. "Duke, are you going to leave the capital city?" Before Wang Sheng had walked out of the line, he was still considered to be in the capital city. When he was only a few steps away from the line, the person who was sitting under the tree and throwing the knife suddenly asked Wang Sheng with a smile. Yes, Wang Sheng also had a smile on his face, as if he had seen an acquaintance. While talking, he did not stop his steps. "Duke, it's better not to leave the capital city." The person who was sitting slowly stood up, holding the knife in his hand. He stared at Wang Sheng's footsteps. "Staying in the capital city, you can enjoy whatever you want. However, once you leave the capital city, I'm afraid there will be many people who will want to settle old scores with you." While the two of them were talking, the people who were scattered on the road 50 meters away also grabbed their own weapons and stared at Wang Sheng. They did not hide the killing intent in their eyes. What a grand lineup! Wang Sheng sneered as if he could not see these people. He continued to chat with the person who was holding the knife closest to him. "I don't care which family you are from, but I'm sure you're not from the Sure family or the Gan family." As he spoke, Wang Sheng had actually walked out of the line of the capital city. In theory, since Wang Sheng had left the capital city, anyone could have made a move on Wang Sheng. However, because of what Wang Sheng had said, the 6 people who were about to make a move forcibly suppressed their impulses. They wanted to know why Wang Sheng had said that. After all, they were indeed not from the Sure family or the Gan family. There was definitely a reason why Wang Shengli could point out all of this with a single sentence. "You must be wondering why the Gan family would not want to kill me after losing hundreds of millions of gold coins in order to ambush me, right?" Wang Sheng did not care whether these 6 people were from the other 6 families. He just walked forward casually, completely disregarding the fact that he had walked into the encirclement of the 6 people. Once he made a move, Wang Sheng would definitely have to face a pincer attack from the 6 people. Obviously, these people had not thought about this before. They wanted to make a move, but it was because their respective masters had discovered the movements of Duke Chongqing's residence at the last minute that they had arranged it. To be able to arrange everything before Wang Sheng left the capital and even dispatch experts of their level, Wang Sheng had already given them face. However, Wang Sheng's words forced the 6 people to stop their plan of making a move and ask about it first. It was not that they did not dare to make a move, but someone shook his head at them from the line of the capital city not far away. There were many spies watching this scene, and there were also many people who knew the identity of these people. Everyone could be sure of one thing: Wang Sheng was right. Regardless of which family these people were from, none of them were from the Sure family or the Gan family. Could it be that there was a secret behind this? If they acted rashly without knowing this secret, it would definitely affect the deployment of the various families in the land of Thousand Despair. This was something that none of them could afford to do. Not to mention that there were people in the capital city who had given them the signal to not make a move for now. Even if there was no signal, experts of their level had the right to make their own decisions. Those who understand will naturally understand. However, Wang Sheng had no intention of explaining. Instead, he continued walking calmly down the road. Those who don't understand should think about it for themselves. The brain is a good thing, and I hope you can have it. As he spoke, Wang Sheng had already walked 30 meters from the short distance of 50 meters. He was still walking at his original speed. However, the 6 people who had hurried over and were ready to make a move were all in a difficult position. They did not know whether to make a move or not. Not only were their faces full of embarrassment, but they were also angry out of humiliation. What Wang Sheng said just now was clearly saying that they were brainless. If they could tolerate it, what else could they not? Chapter 13:12. Those who were ridiculed by Wang Sheng were not only the 6 people who were sent over, but also those managers who gave them the orders. When Wang Sheng left the city, there were actually people watching him along the way. They all pretended to be ordinary people, perhaps to monitor him or send him off. Wang Sheng didn't bother about these people as he walked on. Especially near the boundary of the capital city, there were many people gathered. This was a market at the border, so it was normal for there to be a lot of people. But among so many people, more than 80% of them were in 7th-stage realm and above, so it was much more interesting. At this moment, those managers were not too far away. They were hidden in the crowd, not too far away from the capital city. Wang Sheng's voice wasn't loud, but everyone in the area heard it clearly, so naturally they heard it clearly too. Why? Why didn't Shi and Gan family's people show up? Didn't they want to deal with Wang Sheng? What was the reason behind this? The various managers and their subordinates were thinking quickly, trying to figure out the crux of the matter. Could it be that Shi and Gan family had a private deal with Wang Sheng? Or had they done something in the past which made them wary of Wang Sheng? Shi and Gan family, Shi and Gan family. Tang family's managers' eyes suddenly lit up. What did Shi and Gan family have in common? Wasn't it because they had bought a head start at the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair and stayed there for over a year? Now that Wang Sheng had sold the complete map of the grounds of Thousand Despair, it was said that the location where Shi and Gan family had excavated the peerless treasure was marked. Could it be because of this? How did Wang Sheng know the location of the peerless treasure? It was obvious that he had seen it in there. There was no doubt about that. Why didn't the two families kill him on the spot? At that time, Gan family had even made a move against Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su. But unfortunately, they met with the top exponents from Laojun Temple, which led to their total annihilation. Did Gan family really intend to kill Wang Sheng at that time? None of them were fools. In an instant, everyone understood that there must be a connection between the two. Wang Sheng had definitely played a major role in the gathering of the peerless treasures. Furthermore, he had played a crucial role. Otherwise, why would the Shi clan and Gan clan not side with the other parties at this critical juncture and instead do Wang Sheng a favor? There was a map of the peerless hidden treasure. Since the map required Wang Sheng's help, what about the secret of the 1,000 extremities? One of the Xia family and the Shi family had been in there for more than a year, while the other had been in there for less than half a year. Yet, they had never succeeded. Was there any other reason? Would Wang Sheng be the only one who could solve this unsolvable riddle? Upon realizing this, the various leaders hidden in the crowd instantly understood what was going on. At this time, they couldn't make a move. Wang Sheng still had great value. Others might not know, but those in charge were well aware of the fact that it had been more than a month since the various families had entered the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair. Apart from the loss of manpower, they had gained nothing. Was this a coincidence? If one of the families had gained nothing, it might have been a coincidence. However, all the powers that had entered had gained nothing. Wasn't it a little too much to describe it as a coincidence? Apart from the map of the grounds of Thousand Despair, Wang Sheng also possessed a method to find the secret of the grounds of Thousand Despair. For a moment, everyone felt helpless. They had thought that after Wang Sheng had sold the map of the grounds of Thousand Despair, there wouldn't be many things that could restrain them. However, they hadn't expected that Wang Sheng would secretly leave the Shi clan and the Gan clan as backup. This caused the various parties who had wanted to make a move to withdraw their plans before they even had the chance to do so. How sullen! Regardless of whether it was the 6 experts on the side of the road or the various managers hidden in the crowd, they all felt the same way as they watched Wang Sheng swagger forward. However, just as Wang Sheng was about to step out of the attack range of the expert who had been stuffing peanuts into his mouth swept a glance at the crowd. Suddenly, his pupils shrank. He had seen the signal for him to make a move. The expert who was eating peanuts glanced at the crowd again. Indeed, it was the signal for him to make a move. He had originally thought that he wouldn't be able to make a move today, so he had been a little disappointed. The more disappointed he was, the more he liked eating peanuts. However, he hadn't expected that there would be a turn of events. Now that there was a signal for him to make a move, he would make a move immediately. Wang Sheng had already passed his position. Now, the back of his head was facing the expert. The distance between the two of them was almost 10 meters. This distance was just right. If he suddenly exerted his strength and accelerated The moment he attacked Wang Sheng would be the moment when his attack would be at its strongest. Oh no! The people in Capital City could still see what was going on. As soon as someone made a move, those people immediately saw it. What was that fellow trying to do? Wouldn't he be cutting off all the hopes of all the families by doing this? Which family was that fellow from? As this thought flashed through their minds, the various leaders immediately figured out the identity of the expert. He was from a Xia family. Why did the Xia family want to make a move? Just as this thought flashed through their minds, they found the answer in an instant. Because the Xia family had been in the core area of the Land of Despair for more than a year, they must have discovered something. However, they didn't want Wang Sheng to help the other families stir up trouble. Therefore, the Xia family definitely had a reason to make a move on Wang Sheng. "Stop him!" someone shouted hastily after coming back to his senses. However, even so, it was already too late. The other family's expert, who was closest to the Xia family expert, was still 10 meters away. He was even further away from Wang Sheng. However, the Xia family expert had already pounced behind Wang Sheng. Everyone could even see the terrified look in Wang Sheng's eyes as he abruptly turned his head around. It was unknown how many people in the crowd cried out in alarm when they saw this scene. It seemed as though there had never been so many people in the entire capital city who had stood in the same place and cried out in unison. It was as though Master Yu was holding a baton and waving it in front of them, directing a choir. In the next moment, what should have been a long "ah" suddenly came to an abrupt halt. It was as though an invisible hand had instantly grabbed everyone's throat. The expressions of the people who screamed were also quite interesting. From the initial surprise to horror, and then to even more surprise to disbelief, everyone's expressions were comparable to those of the best actors on Earth. It was so natural, without any trace of artistry. Wang Sheng had indeed turned his head around. However, he hadn't turned his head around in fear, as everyone had expected. Instead, it was as though he had grown eyes on the back of his head and had seen the Xia family expert about to launch a surprise attack on him. When the Xia family expert was still 2 meters away from him, he had already turned around on his own accord. His gaze wasn't one of fear. In fact, there was even a smile on his face. The surprise happened in an instant. Chapter 13:13. Like a feather, Wang Sheng's hand brushed past the blade of the Xia family's expert. It was soft and gentle, and there was no force behind it. However, the sword in the Xia family's expert's hand seemed to have been smashed by a huge iron hammer. It trembled violently. In an instant, the expert could no longer hold onto his weapon. The long sword, which seemed to be of good quality in everyone's eyes, spun and trembled violently as it flew out. Following that, Wang Sheng gently swung his fist, which collided with the fist of the Xia family's expert. From a distance, Wang Sheng's fist also seemed light and powerless. In everyone's eyes, Wang Sheng would definitely be sent flying by this punch. He would be seriously injured or even killed. Reality was just as everyone expected. After Wang Sheng and the expert's fist collided, Wang Sheng's entire body flew backward at a rapid speed. Only then did he land on the ground. Fortunately, Wang Sheng was unharmed when he landed. He didn't spit out blood, nor did he stagger back a few steps. Instead, he turned around easily and continued forward. It was as if the Xia family expert who had just attacked Wang Sheng didn't exist. Not only that, but a bag had appeared in Wang Sheng's hand. Everyone could clearly see that it was the bag of peanuts that the Xia family expert had used. Wang Sheng held it in his hand. Wang Sheng took out a peanut in an exaggerated manner and tossed it high up into the air. He opened his mouth, and the peanut fell in his mouth. Then he chewed on it with a crunching sound. It sounded delicious. Everyone who saw this scene was in an uproar. What was Wang Sheng doing? What surprised everyone even more was that the Xia family expert who had just attacked fiercely stood motionless where Wang Sheng's fist had collided. It was as if he had become a puppet. What happened? Why was that expert standing there motionless? Because his back was facing the crowd? No one knew what had happened. The one who uncovered the mystery was the first to rush to the side of the expert from the Xia family to stop him from attacking Wang Sheng. He saw Wang Sheng's actions more clearly than anyone else, but he didn't see anything wrong. At least the other 5 experts outside the city knew about the expert who had attacked Wang Sheng, and they had a rough idea of his cultivation level. Speaking of which, everyone should be around the same level. They were all at the peak of the legendary realm, and it was enough to deal with an 8th-stage Wang Sheng. Even if Wang Sheng had advanced to the legendary realm during the advancement of the women in the Dream Workshop, it would still be impossible for him to be compared to the veteran peak legendary realm experts. However, Wang Sheng's 2 moves had caused the 5 experts behind him to look at him in a different light. Facing an expert wielding a sharp blade with his bare fists, he accurately knocked the opponent's weapon away with 1 strike and skillfully borrowed the opponent's strength to escape. It was truly a brilliant move. However, the only shortcoming was that Wang Sheng seemed to have wasted the opportunity. Since he had already escaped, he still didn't escape immediately. Instead, he was still walking slowly. Did he really expect them to help Wang Sheng block this expert from the Xia family? No. The experts who were crazily ridiculing him suddenly realized that there was something wrong with the state of the expert from the Xia family. After such a long time, even if Wang Sheng's counterattack made him unable to recover for a while, it was impossible for him to remain motionless for 5 seconds. At this moment, the 5 experts had already rushed to the side of the expert from the Xia family, but their faces instantly became incomparably ugly. At such a close distance, how could they not realize that this expert from the Xia family had completely lost his breath now? An expert at the peak of the legendary realm had died on the spot after exchanging a punch with Wang Sheng? How could this be possible? How terrifying was Wang Sheng's current cultivation level? If it wasn't for the fact that the head of the family didn't allow them to attack Wang Sheng, what would have happened to them now? The people in the capital didn't know what had happened, but at this moment, a group of people had already rushed out and rushed over here. They all wanted to see clearly and at the same time stop the conspiracy of the Xia family. As the footsteps became louder, it seemed as if this place was also shaken. The expert from the Xia family, who had been maintaining a motionless posture, suddenly collapsed in front of everyone. He didn't collapse, which was normal. Instead, he collapsed into a ball. Everyone's expression changed again. This wasn't the appearance of an ordinary person collapsing. It felt as if the person had no bones, only a piece of flesh left, and had lost the support of the body and collapsed. At this time, the people behind had also rushed over. They also saw this scene, and all of them were stunned in place. They looked at Wang Sheng, who was walking away while eating peanuts. Then, they looked at the expert from the Xia family, who had collapsed on the ground. They looked at each other in dismay, and no one could say a word. All the bones in his body had been crushed into powder. The expert who had rushed over first squatted down to check the cause of death of the expert from the Xia family. As soon as his hand touched the corpse, he felt that something was wrong. After a little exploration, he basically determined the cause of death. No wonder when the person collapsed, he didn't look like a normal person. Instead, he collapsed. It turned out that he had turned into a piece of flesh. What kind of terrifying cultivation method was this? What kind of cultivation level was needed to beat an expert at the peak of the legendary realm into a ball of flesh with 1 punch? Or did it happen in an instant? Hiss! The group of people sucked in a breath of cold air. The sound could be heard even from 50 to 60 meters away in the capital. There were at least 20 people who broke out in a cold sweat on the spot, including the masters of the various families who had almost made a move on him. The masters who had prepared to attack were well aware that everyone's cultivation level was about the same. If the expert from the Xia family had been killed with 1 punch, they probably wouldn't have been much better off. Fortunately, the masters had stopped them in time. Otherwise, the expert from the Xia family wouldn't have been the only one who had turned into a piece of flesh, especially the master who had thrown the knife and threatened Wang Sheng. His whole body seemed to be soaked in sweat. In front of an expert who could kill all of them with 1 punch, he actually dared to say such ridiculous, threatening words. Thinking back, it was really like a mouse paying a cat a New Year's greeting. The group of people looked at the corpse for a long time, speechless. Everyone stared blankly at the figure of Wang Sheng getting further and further away. Finally, he disappeared from their sight. During this period, No one dared to chase after him for fear of causing a misunderstanding with Wang Sheng. This continued until Wang Sheng disappeared. Only then did the people around the corpse let out a sigh of relief. The masters of the various families glanced at the corpse, and their hearts trembled. Previously, everyone had underestimated the cultivation level of Wang Sheng. They didn't expect that he could easily kill an expert at the peak of the legendary realm with one punch. Their previous judgment had been wrong. This time, they were in big trouble. Chapter 13-14. It wasn't just one family that had made the wrong judgment. Everyone except for the royal family and the Laojun Temple had made the wrong judgment. In less than 20 minutes, before the leaders of the various families had even returned to their residences, they had already sent out messenger birds to inform their families of the news. Wang Sheng's strength was beyond everyone's imagination, since he was able to kill a legendary pinnacle expert with a single punch. There was no way to kill such a person on the spot. Now that he had entered the grounds of Thousand Despair, everyone in the grounds of Thousand Despair had to be careful. In the grounds of Thousand Despair, no one dared to underestimate Wang Sheng. That was Wang Sheng's territory. Legally speaking, it was Wang Sheng's fief. In terms of actual control, Wang Sheng had absolute authority in the grounds of Thousand Despair. Even the animals listened to him. If Wang Sheng wanted someone to have a hard time in the grounds of Thousand Despair, no one would be able to. Not even Uncle Li would be able to do so. Wang Sheng headed straight for the grounds of Thousand Despair, followed by a group of people who watched him enter the grounds of Thousand Despair. However, after Wang Sheng entered the grounds of Thousand Despair, no one dared to follow him. Once they crossed that line, they would be in Wang Sheng's hands. Who would dare to follow him to their deaths? Everyone was extremely nervous when they received the news. This was especially true for the Xia family. They had failed to kill Wang Sheng, but were instead killed by Wang Sheng. One could only imagine what kind of revenge they would face in the grounds of Thousand Despair. However, although the Xia family was nervous, they weren't particularly afraid. There were at least 10 of them in the grounds of Thousand Despair. No matter how powerful Wang Sheng was, it was impossible for him to gain the upper hand against 10 of them. This was what the higher-ups of the Xia family thought. However, no matter how confident they were, they couldn't be completely certain. They still sent messenger birds in to inform the people inside of the grounds of Thousand Despair. At least they knew what they were facing, so that they wouldn't fall into Wang Sheng's trap while they were unprepared. The Xia family wasn't the only one who received the news. All the teams in the grounds of Thousand Despair received the news. Just this message alone cost each family more than 40 messenger birds in total. They didn't have many messenger birds to begin with, and now that they had lost so many of them, they couldn't bear to lose even one. Those who had never entered the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair would not know how terrifying it was. Only the Sure family and the Gan family had left a deep impression on them. When they heard that Wang Sheng had already entered the grounds of Thousand Devastations, and that before he entered the grounds of Thousand Devastations, they had even planned to attack him. However, after hearing a few words from Wang Sheng, they held themselves back. Both families were grinning from ear to ear. How could a guy who didn't know anything know how great of an advantage Wang Sheng had in the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair? You still want to fight? Let's see what they could do now. The Xia family was doomed. He had seen brainless people, but he had never seen anyone as brainless as the Xia family. They were already besieged and had suffered a great loss in strength. They were already close to the last of the 8 great dukes, yet they still dared to brazenly kill Wang Sheng to protect their advantage. Was that something that could be preserved just by killing Wang Sheng? The two families had witnessed the terrifying scene of Wang Sheng controlling the many demonic beasts in the grounds of Thousand Devastations. Hence, they were absolutely certain that the Xia family members in the grounds of Thousand Devastations were doomed. From then on, the Xia family would never be able to rise again. The higher-ups of the two families had already secretly prepared their men outside, ready to take advantage of the moment when the Xia family's experts were annihilated to launch a fatal attack on the Xia family. Even though the other families did not know how tyrannical Wang Sheng was in the grounds of thousand devastations, they knew that the Xia family must have stirred up a great deal of trouble. No matter what, this was an opportunity. In the grounds of thousand devastations, the families who had received the news acted as if they were facing a great enemy. They hurriedly searched the snowy ground while keeping a close watch on their surroundings. Who knew where Wang Sheng would come from and how he would attack them? After all, it was said that the heavy sniper crossbow in Wang Sheng's hands had a shooting range of 20 kilometers. Who could defend against an arrow shot from 20 kilometers away, which was faster than the speed of sound? While everyone was moving cautiously in the grounds of thousand devastations, Wang Sheng did not head straight for the grounds of thousand devastations as everyone had expected. Instead, he took a detour in the grounds of thousand devastations and appeared in the worry-free city. When Wang Sheng appeared at the north gate of the worry-free city, many people's hearts were thrown into a frenzy. Why would Wang Sheng be here? The only ones who were pleasantly surprised were Aki and her two little handmaidens. Wang Sheng was the only person in Aki's despairing life who could give her a little bit of warmth. There was only one reason for her to continue living. That was to repay Wang Sheng's kindness and then die. In this world, there was no reason for her to continue living. Even in Wang Sheng's mansion in the worry-free city, Aki was like a walking corpse. Every day, other than training like a machine, she would occasionally go out to the grounds of thousand devastations to cultivate as if her life depended on it. Wang Sheng's luck was pretty good. When he arrived, Aki happened to be in the worry-free city. When she saw Wang Sheng, a ripple appeared in Aki's eyes, which were like stagnant water, and she was pleasantly surprised. The two little handmaidens had been living well in the worry-free city all this time. Now, they had already treated Aki as their mistress and served her. After bowing to Wang Sheng, they pushed Aki to Wang Sheng's side. Then, the two little handmaidens happily went to prepare food and drinks for Wang Sheng, leaving Wang Sheng and Aki alone. I've heard about what happened to you. Wang Sheng did not know how to comfort Aki. He had not experienced the pain of being betrayed by a loved one. Moreover, as a warrior, he always felt that he should be able to bear everything. He did not put himself in Aki's shoes and consider things from her point of view. However, Aki was definitely in pain. Therefore, Wang Sheng could only ask this question clumsily. Obviously, this sentence seemed to be enough. Aki directly threw herself into Wang Sheng's arms. She did not know how long she had not shed her tears for. Her tears gushed out like a stream, and in the blink of an eye, they wetted Wang Sheng's chest. This extremely stubborn killer finally revealed her most vulnerable side in front of Wang Sheng. She was a complete mess of crying. However, Aki was Aki after all. Even though she was crying like this, she only shed tears silently. She did not make a sound or even choke. She just silently shed tears. However, this kind of silent crying was even more heartbreaking. After a long time, Aki seemed to have finally vented most of the pain in her heart. Only then did she realize that her tears had already soaked most of Wang Sheng's chest. She was still snuggling in Wang Sheng's arms. Their actions were extremely ambiguous. When she realized this, Aki quickly straightened her body and hurriedly wiped away her tears. However, she did not know how to deal with the tear stains on Wang Sheng's chest. When I left the capital, someone from the Xia family wanted to kill me. Wang Sheng said to Aki in a low voice, "I will help you seek justice." Chapter 13:15. Wang Sheng has entered the carefree city. Somewhere underground, Uncle Li's face lit up with excitement when he heard the news. At the same time, a sharp killing intent flashed across his eyes. Duke Changsheng is in the carefree city. No one is allowed to touch him. The person who sent the message was the butler of the city lord's mansion. However, this time, the butler of the city lord's mansion was not suppressed by Uncle Li's aura like last time. Instead, he calmly warned, "This is the rule. The rule is the rule. How long are you going to follow the rule?" Uncle Li vented his anger at the butler. He had already stayed underground for more than a year and was already extremely frustrated. "Uncle Li, the rule is the rule. The butler was not afraid at all. Ever since Uncle Lee broke his own rule and was suppressed by the city lord, the butler no longer had to lower his voice in front of Uncle Lee. No one is allowed to make a move in the inner city of the Carefree City. This is the reason why the Carefree City has been able to exist until now. Uncle Lee. All right. Uncle Lee's eyebrows were about to rise, but he laughed coldly. I will make a move in the Carefree City. This is in line with the rule, right? When Duke Changsheng leaves the Carefree City, you can send people to do whatever you want. The butler did not seem to be very nervous. He smiled and said, However, Uncle Lee, you promised the city lord that without the city lord's permission, you are not allowed to go above ground. Uncle Lee's face flashed with a trace of malevolence. He looked at the butler and was about to attack. However, the butler seemed to be certain that Uncle Lee would not dare to make a move. He stared at Uncle Lee without backing down. After a while, Uncle Lee suddenly smiled. Don't worry, I will definitely do what I promised the city lord. I will not make a move. The butler also smiled. He cupped his hands and thanked Uncle Lee before leaving. Today, he came to Uncle Lee's place to get this guarantee from him. As for why he took the initiative to tell Uncle Lee that Wang Sheng had come to the Carefree City, he had no choice. Even if the butler did not say it, someone would tell Uncle Lee. The current Uncle Lee was no longer the Uncle Lee of the past. In order to secure the worry-free city's secret manuals, Uncle Lee had asked the city lord for a lot of manpower. One of them had already been roped in by Uncle Lee using some unknown method. There were even a few that the city lord didn't know whether they were Uncle Lee's men in the past or had only become Uncle Lee's men later on. Knowing that Uncle Lee had his own secret power, the mayor could only pinch his nose and accept it. But at the very least, he still had to abide by the rules of the worry-free city. Otherwise, it would be inappropriate for the city lord to make a move on Uncle Lee. Furthermore, even if he did make a move on Uncle Lee, it would not necessarily end well for him. Wang Sheng did not stay in Carefree City for long. After replenishing a batch of supplies, he left Carefree City. Of course, Wang Sheng didn't take advantage of Aqi's perilous state and took him in. He only had a deep conversation with Aqi. However, when Wang Sheng left Carefree City, Aqi insisted on following him regardless of the consequences. She was stopped by Wang Sheng. He wanted to go to the core region of the grounds of Thousand Extremes. With Aqi's cultivation level, she would not be able to withstand the pressure there. The reason why he came to Carefree City wasn't because Wang Sheng really wanted to settle something. He was just using this as an excuse to delay for time. Everyone had witnessed Wang Sheng leaving the capital city and entering Carefree City. The various families in the core region of the grounds of Thousand Extremes had probably made all the necessary preparations and were waiting for him. However, Wang Sheng didn't go along with their wishes and intentionally delayed his journey. The people in the core region were probably already suffering from the wait. This was like the story of the boots thrown upstairs. Everyone knew that the boots would be thrown down, but no one knew when the boots would be thrown down. This kind of situation where they didn't know when Wang Sheng would return, but they knew that he would definitely return. In addition to the strong pressure in the core region of the grounds of Thousand Extremes, the experts in the core region would be twice as tired. In terms of psychological warfare, Wang Sheng was much more proficient than the various large families. Just the fact that they didn't know when and where Wang Sheng would appear in front of them was enough to make those who weren't strong enough collapse. When Wang Sheng left Carefree City and entered the grounds of Thousand Extremes, there were at least 10 people following behind him. However, no one dared to follow too closely and only dared to watch from afar. After confirming that Wang Sheng had indeed entered the grounds of Thousand Extremes, they didn't go any deeper. Due to the many tragic lessons of following Wang Sheng in the grounds of Thousand Extremes, everyone in the grounds of Thousand Extremes worshipped Wang Sheng. However, there were always exceptions. This time, there were 3 experts who followed Wang Sheng into the grounds of Thousand Extremes. They didn't turn back, but headed straight for the border region of the core region of the grounds of Thousand Extremes. It seemed that they weren't following Wang Sheng and were only setting off from the grounds of Thousand Extremes. Wang Sheng didn't pay any attention to the people behind him. He walked along the main road from Carefree City to Carefree City's campsite for a few days and finally arrived at Carefree City's campsite. Then, Wang Sheng changed directions and arrived at the Elder Supreme Elderly Taoist Temple's underground campsite in the grounds of Thousand Extremes. However, he still didn't enter the core region of the grounds of Thousand Extremes. After lingering in the two campsites for more than 10 days, the patience of the people inside had probably been exhausted. Only then did Wang Sheng lose the mood to wander around in the grounds of Thousand Extremes. He headed straight for the core region of the grounds of Thousand Extremes. Entering the core region of the grounds of Thousand Extremes once again, Wang Sheng had a different feeling. In his previous state, other than his acute senses and battle awareness, as well as the warning given to him by the little person, Wang Sheng couldn't sense anything else other than auras. However, this time, Wang Sheng sensed many wild auras coming from several directions. Wang Sheng finally understood how old Taoist Ling, Su, and the others felt when they entered the core region of the grounds of Thousand Extremes. It turned out that it was so different from the others. There weren't any experts' auras in the surroundings. Wang Sheng easily took out the parts of the snowmobile and assembled them. Then, he got on the snowmobile and headed straight for the inner circle. Wang Sheng stopped the snowmobile when he sensed the auras of humans in front of him. He slowly dismantled the parts of the snowmobile and put them back into his storage ring. Although Wang Sheng was already at the peak of the legendary realm, Wang Sheng still didn't notice that the auras in the inner circle weren't much different from the last time he came here. The little person with battle awareness didn't give any special warnings either. Other than the auras of humans, there weren't any other changes. He carefully approached and observed carefully. He didn't know which group of people were in front of him, but he was sure that they were digging in the wrong place. There wasn't any Chinese Valentine's Day in that place, so he definitely wouldn't find anything special. It didn't take long for Wang Sheng to find a huge white bear. Riding on the back of the white bear, Wang Sheng easily hid himself in the thick fur of the white bear. The golden pattern in the original soul space was activated, and all the auras on Wang Sheng's body were completely restrained. No one could detect him anymore. In this way, Wang Sheng controlled the white bear and walked past the 3 excavation sites of the big families. Chapter 13:16. Wang Sheng could not see any pattern in the distribution of the 3 locations. They were not in the center of the inner circle, but the 3 families were digging with great fanfare. It was obvious that each family had some secret records that had been passed down. However, these 3 families were obviously not the Sure family and the Gone family. Judging by their actions, they were still at the stage of building an igloo and digging a tunnel in the igloo. They were not at the same stage as the Sure family and the Gone family when they were digging for the peerless hidden treasures. It could only be said that these 3 families must have seen the remains of the peerless hidden treasures. Otherwise, they would not have used such a backward method. Unfortunately, unless one had the ability like Wang Sheng or was extremely lucky to be able to dig at the right depth and position, it would only take a long time to dig a tunnel. The Sure family and the Gone family had been digging in the inner circle of the place of Thousand Despair for more than a year. Wasn't it the same? Of course, they had only been here for a little more than a month. In these 2 months, they had at most gone to the peerless hidden treasures to take a look and then imitated them. Perhaps they had just built the igloo and dug through the ice layer. It could be seen from the density of the people. Wang Sheng observed from afar. He did not alarm the 3 families, but circled around them. What he was looking for now was the Xia family. From the perspective of the Xia family, killing Wang Sheng was a means to ensure the interests of the Xia family. Of course, they felt that it was reasonable. However, from the perspective of Wang Sheng, the Xia family had crossed the line. If it did not teach the Xia family a deep lesson, any family would dare to use this method to deal with Wang Sheng in the future. Anyway, Wang Sheng would not take revenge after this. How could Wang Sheng tolerate this kind of thing? Wang Sheng was absolutely sure that Mer had placed a high bounty on many members of the Xia family. In the previous series of assassinations in the Godly Might prison, more than 600 famous experts from the Xia family had died. The family leader was fine, but at least 7 members of the Council of Elders had died. Otherwise, the Xia family's new power would not have emerged. However, when a new power of the Xia family rose to power, they still made an extremely foolish decision. This was a common problem in large clans. They thought that as long as they got rid of someone who threatened their interests, everything would be solved. Unfortunately, Wangsheng was not killed as easily as they had expected. Naturally, the Xia family must be prepared for revenge. It had to be said that the design of the double igloos, led by Wang Sheng himself, was really ingenious. It could firmly lock the aura of humans in the 2-story igloos. Even Wang Sheng would not have been able to detect the presence of humans in the igloo without relying on his combat instincts or his powerful hearing. Relying only on his sense of smell, he would not have been able to detect the presence of humans in the igloo. Fortunately, Wang Sheng's hearing was really too outstanding. Even though there was a thick layer of ice between them, Wang Sheng could still detect the movements under the ice. It was really not easy for an ordinary person to know whether there was someone in the igloo from so far away. Wang Sheng spent a few days wandering around the core area of the Grounds of Thousand Despair in order to locate the location of the various clans. In the inner core area of the Grounds of Thousand Despair, at least 20 superdemonic beasts had been released. Although they were still trapped in the formation, they were no longer sealed in the ice mountains. These superdemonic beasts would go berserk if they passed by within a radius of a few miles. Fortunately, Wang Sheng already knew the original location of these demonic beasts. He carefully steered the giant bear around them without alarming them. The Xia family's location was near the center of the inner core area. It was not in the center, but it was not far from the center. It was also a double-story igloo that concealed everyone's presence. What was even more ingenious was that within 2 miles of their igloo, there were a few super demonic beasts that had been released. They were trapped in the formation and could not move. However, any human expert that entered the detection range of the super demonic beasts would go berserk. It could be said that the Xia family had cleverly found a natural alarm for themselves. It was not just an alarm. The aura of the super demonic beasts could ensure that any expert that entered this range would be suppressed. At the very least, it would be impossible to target the Xia family through a surprise attack. The double-story igloo also ensured that the aura of the Xia family's experts would not alarm the super demonic beasts. It was a perfect setup. This was also one of the main reasons why the clans that had entered later did not attack the Xia family after they had snatched a good spot a year earlier. Since they could not launch a surprise attack, they could only rely on brute force to break in. The Xia family had so many experts waiting at ease. Once the experts who had broken in were within a certain distance of the super demonic beasts, what awaited them would definitely be the combined attack of the Xia family's experts. Because of this, the clans could not do anything to the Xia family. However, the Xia family's method had also inspired the other clans. Almost every clan would follow this arrangement after they had chosen their own excavation site. In other words, when they chose their excavation site, they would choose to dig in the vicinity of the super demonic beasts. Wang Sheng relied on the movements of the human experts that he had heard and the distribution of the human experts that the little person with combat awareness had discovered to determine which clan belonged to the Xia family. Other than the Xia family and the Shi family, the other clans had arrived later. They had only been here for less than 2 months and could not dig a long tunnel. Therefore, their members were relatively concentrated. The Shi family would not use such a stupid method to dig. Instead, they would directly dig up the entire area. Therefore, the Xia family's members who had dug the tunnel were relatively scattered. 86 legend rank experts. Among them, 22 were at the peak of the legend rank. This was the entire manpower of the Xia family in the Grounds of Thousand Despair. The members of the Xia family were very cautious. Perhaps they felt that they had more than a year's head start. Therefore, they knew that they were the target of public criticism. Even if there were super demonic beasts outside, they still could not be at ease. Inside the ice house, there were still 3 people on the lookout. Sensing that the 3 of them were on high alert, Wang Sheng was puzzled. How could they see the outside from inside the 2-story ice house? However, in the blink of an eye, he understood. Mirrors. It was a very simple arrangement of a few mirrors. By calculating the angle of reflection, it was like a periscope. It could allow the people inside to see the situation in a certain direction. This would not destroy the structure of the two-story ice house. The human aura inside would be sealed inside and would not leak out. The superdemonic beast would also not be able to detect it. It was a very clever arrangement. Unfortunately, this time, the Xia family had encountered Wang Sheng, the ace sniper on Earth. He was a special soldier who was best at infiltration and long-range sniping. Of course, the members of the Xia family had received the warning from the clan. They had been on alert for almost a month. However, they had not seen Wang Sheng's arrival. They were already very anxious. Fortunately, the people who came here were all experts and had enough patience. Knowing that Wang Sheng had returned, they did not have any fear. Instead, they were always looking forward to Wang Sheng's arrival. Chapter 13-17. Generally speaking, the direction of the super demon beast was generally foolproof. Even if it was a master at the peak of the legendary realm, when faced with the violent pressure of the super demon beast at close range, they could only bitterly resist, unable to move further. When Wang Sheng brought the legendary masters of each family here for the first time, when they saw the super demon beast, so many masters could only crawl little by little and retreat 5 miles away, finally standing up to escape. The Xia family also knew this because they wanted to release the frozen super demon beast from the iceberg. At least one master at the peak of the legendary realm had to release his aura to stimulate the super demon beast. In the process, they must have felt the terrifying aura of the super demon beast. Otherwise, they would not have used this method to add a layer of protection to themselves. It was also because they knew this that the Xia family was very confident in the direction of the super demon beast. They did not have many manpower, and they had to guard several directions, so it was impossible to invest manpower in a direction where no one would come from. No one could come from the direction of the super demon beast. This was common sense. In the inner circle of the ground of Thousand Despair, this was common sense that everyone agreed. However, this everyone did not include Wang Sheng. The super demon beast was indeed fierce, and its senses were very keen. Even small things like snow rats that often lived in the inner circle of the ground of Thousand Despair, hiding under the ice and snow, could not escape their keen senses. But Wang Sheng had a unique skill. The golden pattern in the origin soul space could shield all the aura of Wang Sheng. As long as Wang Sheng was not directly seen by others, it would not be exposed. When the super sperm whale expanded Wang Sheng's origin soul space, everything related to the origin soul space was strengthened, including the golden pattern. Originally, Wang Sheng's golden pattern could keep Wang Sheng's aura for half an hour, but now, this time was almost 5 times longer. Within 2.5 hours, Wang Sheng could not emit any aura. But this was not enough. The super demon beast was not only powerful in its aura, but also in its keen senses. It was easy to hide from the smell and aura of the super demon beast, but it was not so easy to hide from the vision and hearing of the super demon beast. Even in the snow, it was impossible. Therefore, from the very beginning, Wang Sheng did not plan to hide it from the super demonic beast. Taking a detour from a slightly further direction, Wang Sheng used the 7-word formula of the 9 secret words along the way. There was only one purpose, which was to increase the sense of intimacy and reduce the hostility. The more powerful the demonic beast, the more intelligent it would be. At the same time, it would also be more arrogant. As for some small animals, as long as their cultivation did not exceed a certain level, they would not even look at them. They wouldn't even put ants in their eyes, so why would they be enraged because of those things? Wang Sheng was currently in such a state. Although his movements could be seen and heard by the super monstrous beast, it was just a tiny ant with a slightly larger body. Not only did it not emit any dangerous aura, it even gave off an indescribable feeling of intimacy. More importantly, a small demonic beast like Wang Sheng did not pose the slightest threat. Even if those super demon beasts saw him, they would not care at all. Countless people could not imagine that Wang Sheng would just swagger around from a slightly further direction. With his back facing the super demon beast near the Xia family, he slowly walked towards the double-story igloo of the Xia family. The double-story igloo could isolate the aura of most humans. This was due to the special structure and temperature. Similarly, the thick double-story igloo could also isolate the sound from the outside. At least the sound coming from Wang Sheng's direction was extremely soft. No one would have expected that Wang Sheng would come from this direction. The Xia family also did not expect it. Wang Sheng had already reached the edge of the igloo. When he could reach out and touch the igloo, the people inside still did not know what had happened. They were all in the tunnel that had been dug under the igloo. Was there a simpler way to kill them than directly blocking the entire tunnel? Wang Sheng circled around the igloo. He went around the observation windows and carefully placed a few hundred kilograms of black gunpowder on it. He lit the fuse and quickly retreated. At the same time, a heavy sniper crossbow appeared in his hands. He aimed directly at the exit of the igloo. The movements caused by these few movements, including the sound of the black gunpowder fuse burning, had already attracted the attention of the experts on guard inside. The three people who were watching the outside did not hesitate to sound the alarm. Then, the three of them rushed out together. Although they didn't know how the enemy managed to reach the edge of the igloo without alerting the super demonic beasts, but there was definitely no mistake about it. The experts below had already rushed over from the passageway, and three experts rushed out without thinking. If it was an expert breaking through, this would be the most correct response. However, this time, it was not a group of experts breaking through. It was a sneak attack by Wang Sheng alone. Wang Sheng did not attract the hostility of the super demon beast, nor did he provoke it. The super demon beast maintained its normal state of cultivation on the ice surface. However, when the three experts from the Xia family rushed out with a murderous aura, their own aura immediately attracted the hostility of the super demon beast. Roar. A ferocious roar pierced the sky, and an overwhelming aura rushed towards the three Xia family experts. The three experts who were on high alert were caught off guard and immediately bore the brunt of the super demonic beast's ferocious aura. In an instant, the three experts who rushed out froze. Wang Sheng's heavy sniper crossbow had already been fired. It was aimed at the first expert who rushed out. Those who were in charge of being on guard were definitely the cream of the crop of experts from the Xia family. Under normal circumstances, if they were constantly on guard, Wang Sheng's heavy sniper crossbow might have missed. However, now that they were suddenly suppressed by the aura of the super demon beast, their minds were in chaos. How could they resist Wang Sheng's heavy sniper crossbow? The heavy arrow hit its target in an instant. The expert who was struck by the arrow paused. Hong! The formation on the heavy arrow immediately exploded, blasting open a transparent hole in the expert's chest. At the moment the heavy arrow exploded, the black gunpowder that Wang Sheng had set up in several directions also exploded. Boom! 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 After a few consecutive explosions, the two-story igloo that the Xia family had spent God knows how long to build was instantly blown to pieces. The huge explosion made the super demon beast even angrier. Its entire body rushed to the edge of the array. If not for the fact that it was firmly restrained by the array, it would probably have rushed over. That terrifying aura was exerted on everyone in this direction like a tidal wave. At this time, a large box had already been placed at the entrance of the passageway. The faint flickering light indicated that this was the fuse that Wang Sheng had lit. Chapter 13:18. Those experts who had yet to rush out of the passageway were struck by such a huge explosion, followed by a surge of violent aura that soared to the sky. All of their movements came to a halt. These experts were all too familiar with the aura of the super demonic beast. At such a close distance, the members of the Xia family would occasionally offend the super demonic beast. As soon as they sensed the violent aura, the experts of the Xia family in the underground passageway knew that the super demonic beast was angry. The good news was that everyone was tens of feet underground, separated by a thick layer of ice and soil. No matter how powerful the super demonic beast's aura was, it did not affect them much. It only made them feel a little afraid. However, that was all. Everyone believed that the formation in the grounds of despair would be able to restrain the super demonic beast. As long as they did not rush out, they would not be suppressed too much. The bad news was that the higher-ups had already sent out a warning. Perhaps Wang Sheng had already rushed over to start a massacre. The loud explosion just now must have been a big one. If they did not rush out, they might be trapped in this underground passageway. The explosion of the double-story igloo was only a very loud sound to the people below. The other movements were not that big. However, before they could rush out, another loud explosion came from the ice at the entrance of the passageway. Boom! It was another violent explosion. However, this time, the explosion did not happen outside, but inside the passageway. The shockwave from the explosion shook the entire underground passageway. Some places even shook a few times. This commotion was definitely much stronger than the explosion outside. After the explosion, there was a clear sound of something breaking and falling. The sound of a large piece of ice collapsing could be heard throughout the entire passageway. All the experts here put down their arrogance as peerless experts outside and personally participated in the excavation. Therefore, when they heard the sound, they immediately realized what had happened. The passageway under the igloo had been destroyed by the explosion just now. If they did not want to be trapped and starved to death in this underground passageway, they would have to open up a passageway to the surface even if they had to risk their lives. Moreover, they could not be too slow because the fresh air in the passageway was limited. Although the people of this world did not have the concept of oxygen, they knew that being suffocated below would suffocate them to death. Just when everyone realized this, the expert who was rushing at the very front and was about to reach the entrance of the passageway saw a dazzling light. It was a large ball of oiled fur that Wang Sheng had thrown into the passageway. It was burning rapidly. The fur was soaked in flammable oil, so it could burn quickly. In the pitch-black underground world that was only illuminated by torches, the glow from the burning fur was dazzling enough. It only burned and did not explode. This allowed the experts of the Xia family to relax a little. The flames were burning fiercely and brightly. It was enough for them to observe carefully. A few of them rushed over. Without caring about anything else, they hurriedly looked to see how much of the slanting passage had been buried. However, what they didn't realize was that Wang Sheng did it on purpose. The fresh air in the passageway was limited to begin with, and burning Wang Sheng's oiled fur would consume a lot of it. This consumption was much more than breathing for each person. Moreover, the carbon dioxide produced from the combustion was also a fatal poison in this enclosed space. 1 against 86 experts, Wang Sheng was not that stupid. Since there was such a good environment, it would be a crime not to make use of it. However, before that, Wang Sheng had to first get rid of the guards above. One of the guards had already been killed. The other two were dizzy from the pressure of the super demonic beast and the violent explosion. In order to block the passageway entrance, Wang Sheng did not deal with the two of them first. Now that they had recovered, they charged towards Wang Sheng from the left and right, one on the right, against the pressure of the super demonic beast. The 6 words formula was enough for Wang Sheng to easily deal with the pressure of the super demonic beast. After playing with the heavy snow for so long, coupled with the fact that he had seen so many powerful beasts in the sea, including those of the 14th stage, these super demonic beasts in the grounds of 1,000 despair were nothing to them. Moreover, Wang Sheng's soul had devoured a 14th stage super sperm whale, so he was born with the pride of a super demonic beast. Even if the super demonic beast used its full strength, it would not be able to affect Wang Sheng. The outcome of Wang Sheng, who was completely unaffected, against the 2 legend rank experts who were suppressed and injured by the explosion, was not surprising at all. 2 minutes later, the 2 legend rank experts from the Xia family widened their eyes like 2 dead fish. With a look of disbelief, they lay on the ground and stopped breathing. Even in death, they could not believe what they had seen. They could not believe that Wang Sheng had easily killed the 2 of them with his bare hands. They died with everlasting regret. The super demonic beast's anger did not last for long, because it soon discovered that there was no longer any aura that could provoke it. Other than the large crater where the ice house was originally, and the occasional black smoke, there was no other living thing. There was only a very close and non-threatening little fellow walking around, completely unaffected by its life. The Xia family's ice house seemed to have disappeared from the grounds of 1,000 despair, just like that. However, Wang Sheng could still keenly sense that there was a large group of experts gathering about 10 feet below. The gathering point was naturally near the passageway. If they wanted to come up or open up the air vent, this was the easiest place to do so. Although it had been destroyed by Wang Sheng, there was still a foundation, so it might be easy to dig it out. However, the Xia family was the Xia family. When a big family did things, they had to be safe. It was just an exit, so of course it was very dangerous. If it was destroyed like this, everyone would be buried here. When the Xia family did things, how could they put all their eggs in one basket? There was more than one exit in this underground passageway. Even a cunning rabbit had 3 burrows, not to mention that the Xia family had been operating here for more than a year. Other than this passageway, Wang Sheng also discovered that there were 2 other groups of people that had begun to gather in 2 different directions. Those were the other 2 backup exits. They were not directly dug through, but dug into a place that was not very thick under the ice. As long as they put in a little effort, they would be able to dig it out easily. They were about 2 miles away from the ice house. If it was not for Wang Sheng's sharp hearing and combat awareness, as well as the addition of the little person, which allowed him to find these 2 exits, Wang Sheng would not have been able to discover the arrangements here. The 2 exits were not far from each other. They were about 5 miles away from the super demonic beast. Sensing the movements of the experts under the ice, Wang Sheng did not bat an eyelid. He uttered a few very soft syllables. In a short while, this place was filled with white demonic beasts. Chapter 13:19. The monsters that lived in this world of ice and snow were all white. The giant bear was like this, the snow rat was like this, the snow fox was like this, and even the snow was like this, pure white. Wang Sheng was well aware of the principle of protective coloration. In this world of ice and snow, white could protect oneself from being discovered by hunters. When necessary, it could also protect oneself from prey. This was the choice of nature. The distance between the 2 exits was about 500 meters. At each exit, there was a group of snow rats and snow foxes. There was also a giant bear on one side and a giant tiger on the other. They were all dozens of meters tall and were taller than humans when they opened their mouths. There were not many monsters either. At each exit, there were about 30 of them, which was more than the number of experts from the Xia family. As for strength, everyone was well aware that at the same level, the demonic beasts were definitely stronger than humans. Although the snow rats did not have large bodies, when they made a move, they could sneak around the snowy ground without leaving a trace. Without Wang Sheng's ability, one snow rat would be able to take on 10 experts, giving them a hard time. Moreover, there was more than one snow rat. These demonic beasts, even the largest of them, the giant bear and the giant tiger, moved silently in the snow. They stealthily hid their auras and ambushed, not alerting the Xia clan's experts below. On the contrary, their sharp hearing had already detected the movements under the snow. They sharpened their claws and teeth, waiting to feast. The experts from the Xia family were quite cautious. Even though they were near the entrance, they still listened carefully for any movements around them before starting to chisel through the ice. They did not dare to use their auras to probe. Who knew if there were any ferocious monsters passing by? If they used their auras to probe, they would alert the monsters. That would not be good. The layer of ice that was left behind was about 6 meters thick. On top of the ice, there was a thick layer of snow that was about 3 meters thick. For a bunch of legendary level experts, 6 feet of solid ice wasn't an insurmountable moat at all. From the exit on the right, they easily dug a large hole from the bottom to the top, which was large enough for one person to pass through. As soon as a peak legendary expert poked his head out, several demonic beasts that had been waiting impatiently swarmed over. The expert only managed to block the 3 snow mice's pincer attack in a flurry. His calf was bitten by another snow fox, and half of his calf was bitten off. At the same time, he saw the giant bear that was the size of a small hill in front of him. The scream only lasted for half a second before it abruptly stopped. The giant bear had bitten off the upper half of the body of the expert who had come out first. Before the lower half of the body could even fall to the ground, it was torn into pieces by a group of snow rats, snow foxes, and other demonic beasts. The experts in the cave were shocked. Before they could rush out to see what had happened, a heavy arrow was shot into the cave from outside. Then a box was thrown into the cave. The 2 experts following behind were directly pierced through by the heavy arrows. Then with a loud bang, they exploded into pieces. The Xia family experts in the passageway were even more shocked. Without thinking, a group of people gathered their full strength and threw a palm strike in the opposite direction of the cave entrance. The box that Wang Sheng had thrown into the cave also exploded at this moment. Together with the attacks of the Xia family experts, there was another earth-shattering explosion. The entrance that had just been dug was instantly blasted open. However, immediately after, countless pieces of ice and snow immediately filled the hole under the influence of gravity, sealing the entrance tightly once again. That was not all. Under Wang Sheng's command, the giant bear stepped forward without saying anything and slammed its paws down fiercely. Its huge body and terrifying strength clearly had the effect of a road roller. Just now, the relatively loose cave had collapsed, but after being slammed down a few times, it immediately became as solid as if it had been frozen for a few months. There was originally a section of the ice passageway that had not collapsed, but after being slammed down by the bear, the backup passageway was firmly blocked. A few of the Xia family experts were caught off guard and did not retreat fast enough. They were forcefully slammed into the pile of ice by the giant bear. They watched as the ice and snow below them turned dark red. Not long after, the second backup passageway heard the commotion. They seemed to have realized that something was wrong and did not immediately open the passageway, afraid that they would follow in the footsteps of the first passageway. The 3 passageways that could allow quick entry and exit had all been cut off by Wang Sheng. The people inside were instantly flustered. They did not see the enemy and could not be completely sure that the enemy was Wang Sheng. However, judging from the successive explosions, there should be no one else besides Wang Sheng. The elder leading the team cursed the principal elder of the capital city countless times in his heart. Did he have nothing better to do than to attack Wang Sheng? The other clans did not make a move. You were the only one who would try to show off. Now, you had directly attracted the other party's revenge. They had originally thought that Wang Sheng had not come for more than a month because he was at his wit's end. They had not expected that this was the other party's plan to tire them out. Now, so many experts were stuck in this pitch-black underground passageway. What was even more unexpected was that they had specially lit torches to fight against the darkness. These torches were helping them to deplete the little oxygen in the underground passageway. Fortunately, the passageway was very long. After more than a year, they had dug at least a few dozen miles, so they did not have to worry about anything for a while. When everyone was gathered and checked, the elder leading the team discovered that 8 of them had died and 3 more were injured. They had paid such a huge price, but they did not even get to see the person. This was truly the most frustrating battle they had participated in their entire lives. The Xia family had paid such a huge price to seize the first opportunity for a year. They had thought that it was a great thing, but after bringing their experts in, they realized that the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair was not a fun place. They had lost more than 10 experts on the way here before they finally found the place recorded in the ancestral records. However, the records of the ancestral records were not very detailed. Even if there was a map, the map from 500 years ago was simply too inaccurate. The scale was completely wrong. They knew that it was the area, but that area was at least a few miles in radius. How are they going to find it? Moreover, this area was dozens of feet under solid ice. How are they going to find it? If not for the fact that they were all legendary experts and had indomitable willpower, they would probably have gone crazy just from facing this problem. Fortunately, everyone had seen the two-story ice house left behind by Wang Sheng and the peerless treasures of the Shi family and the Gan family. They knew how to dig down and followed suit and dug out such a huge area. They did not expect that because of a mistake made by that idiot in the capital city, they would now be faced with a disaster. Chapter 13:20. In front of the enemy, complaining was useless. They still had to find a way to face the strong enemy. But the problem was that Wang Sheng had blocked all the exits they could get out of. If they wanted to dig out from other places, it would not be a matter of a day. They could not even get out, let alone fight. They could not afford to lose face in this situation. More than 80 experts of the legendary realm were blocked by one person and could not get out. How depressed could they be? What should they do? Several leaders gathered together to think of a way to deal with Wang Sheng. At this moment, Wang Sheng was carefully examining the bodies of the 3 experts who were in charge of guarding the ice house not long ago. The first expert was killed by an arrow from his heavy sniper crossbow, so it was not surprising. However, when facing the second and third experts, Wang Sheng clearly felt that the strength of the 2 experts of the legendary realm did not seem to be displayed. At first, Wang Sheng thought that the 2 experts were suppressed by the aura of the super monster, but after blocking the second exit, Wang Sheng realized that something was wrong. The Xiao family had been here for more than a year and a half. If it was really the suppression of the super monster, they should have gotten used to it by now, right? Wang Sheng could get used to it after experiencing it many times. Why couldn't others? Wang Sheng never felt that he was superior to others, so he came to the conclusion that the suppression of the super monster was part of the reason, but it was definitely not the main reason. There must be another reason for the other party's strength to decline so much. Out of the caution of a sniper, Wang Sheng carefully examined the bodies of the 3 people. The legs of the 3 corpses were a little blue. Wang Sheng thought that it was caused by the low temperature, but he soon realized that it was not right. After careful examination, the 3 corpses had more or less subcutaneous hyperemia, concentrated around the hair follicles. Looking carefully at the gums of the corpses, it was obvious that there was bleeding and atrophy. Now, Wang Sheng knew what was going on. Even without the suppression of the super monster, the strength of the experts of the Xia family was greatly affected. There was no doubt about this. Other than Wang Sheng, no one knew that these guys were actually sick. Most likely, they would think that it was because these experts had been living in the inner zone of the grounds of Thousand Despair for a long time and had been affected by the violent spiritual energy. Moreover, they had been living underground for a long time without seeing the light of day. They would never have thought that the decline in their strength was due to physical illness. Perhaps because they didn't have any reference, the experts of the Xia family didn't think that they were weaker than before. At most, they would assume that the spiritual energy in the inner circle of the grounds of Thousand Despair had affected their performance. Let alone the Xia family, the experts from the other families must have thought the same. A bunch of pitiful worms. Wang Sheng had a smile on his face, but he sighed and shook his head. You don't even know that you have scurvy. How ignorant. Scurvy was a malignant disease that the sailors of the Age of Discovery often got before they knew why. The root cause was vitamin C deficiency. More than 80 experts had to live in the grounds of Thousand Despair for more than a year. During this period of time, it wasn't convenient for them to travel back and forth. Therefore, they must have brought all their daily necessities in one go. Vegetables and fruits contain a large amount of vitamin C, but compared to meat, they took up too much space. Therefore, the experts of the Xia family must have brought enough meat as food, but not a lot of vegetables and fruits. Even if they had brought some, the quantity would definitely not be balanced. After the early stage of consumption, there would be none left later. If they lacked vitamin C for a long period of time, it would be strange if they didn't get leukemia. It was only because their average cultivation base was high and they had the nourishment of spiritual energy that their bodies didn't deteriorate too quickly. However, a year and a half was enough for scurvy to slowly corrode their bodies. Bleeding gums, atrophied hair follicles, These were all typical symptoms of scurvy. Previously, the Shi and Gan families were trapped in the grounds of Thousand Despair for more than a year. They were so weak that they were on the verge of death. It was only because Wang Sheng provided them with a batch of supplies that they managed to survive. However, Wang Sheng had always had the habit of bringing vegetables and fruits, but he didn't teach this habit to others. In other words, the experts of the Shi and Gan families had not only suffered from decompression sickness, but they also had a very serious scurvy. It was just that Wang Sheng didn't mention it. Now, it seemed that the Xia family had fallen because of this inconspicuous disease that they had never heard of, but they didn't know it themselves. There was nothing they could do. The ocean in this world was too dangerous. How many people had the opportunity to go out to sea? In other words, these people of the Xia family were already sick. Their overall strength had decreased by at least 20 to 30%. Since this was the case, why did Wang Sheng have to use this method to suffocate them underground? Just as Wang Sheng confirmed this point, Wang Sheng heard the experts of the Xia family challenge him. Duke Changsheng, if you have the ability, let's fight one-on-one. What's the point of blocking the door like this? When he first heard the voice, Wang Sheng was stunned. He didn't expect that among the experts of the Xia family, there would be someone who could pass the voice so clearly to his ears through the thick layer of ice. However, after a few moments, Wang Sheng realized that it wasn't because these experts had high cultivation, but because they had really made a lot of preparations here. Originally, Wang Sheng planned to suffocate these guys underground. However, this voice reminded Wang Sheng that the Xia family had dug such a long tunnel, so they must have left ventilation holes in all directions. These sounds were coming from an inconspicuous ventilation hole nearby. Since they had planned to fight a protracted battle here, how could they not have prepared these aspects? Even if they didn't know about the existence of oxygen, it didn't stop the Xia family from digging ventilation holes in several places in the tunnel. The thin ventilation holes were dozens of feet long. With a few turns, no monster could detect the breath of humans through the ventilation holes, not even super monsters. In other words, the method that Wang Sheng wanted to use to suffocate all the experts of the Xia family underground was no longer feasible, unless Wang Sheng could find all the ventilation holes. But this was obviously impossible. Since it didn't work, Wang Sheng immediately changed his method. Although he could still achieve his goal by trapping them like this, it was obviously too inefficient. Since the other party had challenged him and wanted a one-on-one battle, Wang Sheng immediately followed the advice and gave them a chance. Come out from the remaining spare passage. I will give you a chance to fight one-on-one. Wang Sheng didn't use any special method. He directly shouted in the direction of the voice. Wang Sheng believed that the other party must be able to hear his voice. Sure enough, after a while, there was another voice. Duke Changsheng is really straightforward. Let's fight. Hong, it was unknown how many people had gathered together to attack. Near the second spare passage, countless ice and snow flew up and then instantly revealed a big hole. As soon as the hole appeared, at least a dozen figures rushed out and quickly occupied the four sides, for fear that this exit would also be blocked. Chapter 13:21. The surprise attack that they had imagined did not happen. Instead, the dozen or so people calmly took up an advantageous position. The group of experts rushed out from the passageway and lined up. Only then did they see the situation around them. Then they all stood rooted to the ground. Around them stood a large group of white demonic beasts. There were beasts of all sizes, neatly arranged according to their size. The largest bear in the middle was bigger than any demonic beast they had ever seen. The smallest at the edge was a snow rat that was only as long as a human's thigh. All the demonic beasts were quietly squatting in a semicircle, facing the Xia family experts who had rushed out. This scene was too strange. It was so strange that it was terrifying. The Xia family experts had seen the terrifying demonic beasts in the inner circle of the grounds of Thousand Extremities along the way. Many of them had died under the claws and teeth of these demonic beasts. How could such terrifying demonic beasts be so obedient? They were like tamed livestock. However, if they were facing Wang Sheng, then everything was possible. Didn't the super scavenger, man-eating ant army in the grounds of Thousand Extremities obediently listen to Wang Sheng's commands? What was so strange about Wang Sheng being able to command the demonic beasts in the core of the grounds of Thousand Extremities? The problem was, if that was the case, then everyone would definitely be watching a show. Being able to control demonic beasts was definitely a rare trick. However, if the person controlling the demonic beasts was an enemy, then it would not be fun at all. It would make everyone so speechless that they would want to bite the bastard in the capital to death. The last person to come out was the leader of the Xia family's team in the grounds of Thousand Extremities. When he saw the situation before him, this Xia family elder could not help but laugh bitterly. In this situation, he was afraid that he would only be able to fight one-on-one. It was impossible to rely on numbers to bully Wang Sheng alone. Duke Changsheng, why did you have to do this? This elder from a Xia family was called Xia Feihong. He had never met Wang Sheng face-to-face, but he had met Wang Sheng before. At this moment, he stood up with a bitter face. He cupped his hands at Wang Sheng and said, "Someone in the Xia family has done something stupid in the capital. I am willing to offer the heads of his entire family as compensation to Duke Changsheng. Please be magnanimous. The Xia family will be eternally grateful." There was a hint of pleading in Xia Feihong's voice. If it was just Wang Sheng alone and he let them out, it would be a different story. But now, they were surrounded by hundreds of demonic beasts, and there was also Wang Sheng. That was a completely different matter. You also know that someone in your family has done something stupid. Wang Sheng's lazy voice was devoid of any emotion as he said to Xia Feihong, "If it were your Xia family, what would you do?" What else could he do? No matter how unbearable the Xia family was, they were still one of the 8 great families. The dignity of a great family could not be offended. If someone dared to target a member of the Xia family, there was no other possibility than being hunted down and killed. Of course, if the opponent was also a great family, there was an exception. "Duke Changsheng, we are willing to compensate you with a high price." Xia Feihong knew that Wang Sheng had always been greedy for money. If he could solve this with gold, he would be willing to go bankrupt. Xia Feihong said this with a glimmer of hope. "I don't lack gold." Wang Sheng smiled again. "I didn't intend to turn against you, but since so many of you sent people to block me outside the capital, I have to get back at you, right?" Xia Feihong smiled bitterly again. He knew that there was no way to resolve this matter. After cursing the guy in the capital again, he could only bite the bullet and say to Wang Sheng, "Duke, let's see who's the real deal." What else could Xia Feihong say when Wang Sheng had already said that he would get back at them? Who didn't know what the 6 families were trying to do outside the capital? It was only at the last moment that Wang Sheng's words made them give up on their original plans. From Xia Feihong's point of view, if Wang Sheng had not chased him into the land of Thousand Despair for revenge, he would have made the same decision even if he was there. One's position determined one's actions. This was a principle that had never changed. For the benefit of the Xia family, it was necessary to get rid of any opponents that could threaten the Xia family. However, they had failed this time. No one expected that Wang Sheng could survive the attack of a legendary pinnacle expert and even kill him with a single punch. Xia Feihong looked at the monsters that surrounded them and couldn't help but ask Wang Sheng, "These monsters won't swarm us, right? Don't you want to fight one-on-one?" Wang Sheng sneered and said to Xia Feihong, "As long as you don't swarm us, they won't swarm us." Seeing that Wang Sheng had already commanded the demonic beasts to retreat and create an empty space, Xia Feihong could only let out a long sigh. He gestured for one of the experts beside him to step out. Wang Sheng said that the monsters wouldn't swarm us as long as we fought one-on-one. Now, everyone had to believe it. However, everyone knew that if Wang Sheng were to be defeated, he would most likely not keep his promise of a one-on-one duel. However, everyone thought that there was no other way. If these monsters were to swarm us, it would be safer for them to hide in the underground passage. Xia Feihong's plan now was to rely on the experts on his side to suppress Wang Sheng. It would be best if they could capture him alive. Otherwise, they could only kill him and rush back into the underground passage to defend against these monsters. In any case, as long as Wang Sheng died, They would be able to hold on for a period of time, and these monsters would naturally disperse. However, reality still slapped Xia Fei Hong and all the members of the Xia family hard in the face, even though it was a good idea. After an hour, Wang Sheng's opponents had changed 20 times, but Wang Sheng was still alive and kicking. However, all 20 of Wang Sheng's opponents had died on the spot. Not a single one of them could last more than 5 minutes against Wang Sheng. How was this possible? Xia Fei Hong couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the scene in front of him. More than 10 legendary pinnacle experts had stayed in the inner circle of the ground of Thousand Despair for a year and a half. Logically speaking, their cultivation should have improved a lot, and they should be much stronger than they were outside. However, they couldn't even withstand 5 minutes of attacks from Wang Sheng. What kind of weapon did Wang Sheng use? Nothing at all. It was just a black, oddly shaped knife. Moreover, the knife had never come into contact with his opponent's weapon. The only thing it had come into contact with was his opponent's flesh. What kind of move was that? How could it be so powerful? For a moment, everyone in the Xia family was shocked. Could it be that these legendary masters were so weak? Chapter 1322. Even when the Xia family's experts didn't use any weapons and tried to directly clash with Wang Sheng's spiritual qi, Wang Sheng didn't run away and always met them fiercely. However, the Xia family's experts died even faster when they clashed with the spiritual qi. Xia Fei Hong wasn't the only one who was dumbfounded. All the Xia family's experts had a look of disbelief on their faces. These 20 experts were definitely the most powerful 20 experts they had encountered during this trip. During normal sparring sessions, no one would be a match for them when there were so many of them left. How could they not even last a few minutes under Wang Sheng's hands? This wasn't Wang Sheng waiting for them to tire themselves out. It was clearly them taking turns to fight him. Wang Sheng didn't even take a break. Every time he killed their companions and confirmed their deaths, he would coldly shout at them, "Next!" At the start, everyone thought that Wang Sheng was just lucky. However, when the 20 experts were lying on the ground one after another, and the surrounding snow had completely turned blood red, everyone realized what kind of killer they were facing. But why? The last time Xia Fei Hong saw Wang Sheng's cultivation, he was only at the 7th stage. Even if his cultivation improved very quickly, he was now at the 8th stage. If he was a genius, he would have already entered the legendary realm. But how could he, who had just entered the legendary realm, be able to go head-to-head with an expert at the peak of the legendary realm and not be at a disadvantage? Even though there were a lot of questions, the Xia family had no choice but to bite the bullet and send one expert after another to their deaths. Xia Fei Hong knew that it was impossible for them to retreat in one piece under the current situation. The only way was to use the human wave tactic to exhaust Wang Sheng to death. That way, they might still have a chance of survival. From the past experience of dealing with Wang Sheng could be considered a person who followed the rules. At least so far, he was really facing everyone alone. He did not go back on his words and did not use so many demonic beasts. Xia Fei Hong could only place all his hopes on Wang Sheng keeping his word. If he were in Wang Sheng's shoes, he probably wouldn't be able to guarantee that he would keep his word in a life-and-death situation. However, the problem was that the current situation was no longer something they could control. It was impossible to capture Wang Sheng. At that moment, Xia Fei Hong's heart was once again filled with despair. He cursed the elder in the capital once more. If the other clans don't make a move, wouldn't it be over if you just accept the situation? If everyone gave up halfway, it wouldn't be shameful. Why bother provoking this malefic star? However, in the blink of an eye, Xia Fei Hong calmed down. If he wasn't having a good time here, would that guy from the capital be having a good time? Was that girl from the dream workshop that easy to deal with? She had offered a bounty of hundreds of millions of gold coins at every turn. Perhaps the entire Xia family in the capital, as well as many people in the Xia country, would hate him to death. Right now, the only thing Xia Fei Hong could do was to maintain the dignity of the Xia family. He sent his experts to fight Wang Sheng one by one, hoping that Wang Sheng would be worn out and killed. There was no other way. One expert went up, then another. The Xia family was already numb to it. There were no exceptions. The only difference was the length of time they lasted. However, as the ones with the highest cultivation slowly died, the ones who went up to fight Wang Sheng were able to last for less and less time. Another hour passed in the blink of an eye, but more than 40 people from the Xia family had died. There were only 32 or 33 people left standing. Wang Sheng was still standing straight, his chest puffed out and his head raised. He looked very energetic. His gaze was calm, and his tone was calm. He coldly said, "Next." The dagger in his hand kept dripping with blood. This scene, in the eyes of the Xia family, could no longer be described as ordinary horror. This was a demon. How could the Xia family be so naive to think that they could easily deal with him? They might have a chance if they swarmed him, but the hundreds of monsters lined up neatly around them would not give them that chance. Once they made a move, they would definitely die a horrible death. Xia Feihong was already in despair. He no longer dared to hope that Wang Sheng would die from exhaustion. His only hope was that someone could defeat Wang Sheng and fight for a chance of survival for everyone. Even if they had to give up this camp that they had been running for more than a year, they would not hesitate. As long as they were still alive, they could still make a comeback after they recuperated. If they were all dead, their efforts over the past year would have been in vain. Every expert from the Xia family was currently under immense pressure. They were no longer fighting in order of cultivation. Instead, they were fighting in order of position. Whoever was in their turn would be the one to fight, and no one could avoid it. They were all legendary experts and had their own pride. They had all experienced mountains of corpses and seas of blood to reach their current cultivation realms. They were not afraid of battle, nor were they afraid of death. However, the helplessness of lining up to die while being unable to do anything to the other party really made these legendary experts despair. It was a sudden reversal of everything they had learned in the past. They could not believe what they had learned in the past. In front of Wang Sheng, no matter how hard they tried, they could only helplessly admit that they were no match for Wang Sheng. Be it in terms of techniques or spiritual energy, they were all inferior. This despair deeply affected everyone in the Xia family. However, what surprised Wang Sheng was that not a single one of them retreated. They all lined up quietly and took turns to die. Perhaps they knew that they could not escape, so they wanted to maintain their last bit of dignity. Another hour passed. This time, there was only one person left besides Xia Feihong. The others were all lying in a pool of blood. Even the last subordinate began to slowly step forward. His face had an expression of being ready to die. He didn't cry out in despair. He just rushed toward Wang Shengfei, raised the long saber in his hand high, and fiercely chopped down. Xia Feihong had already closed his eyes. He knew what would happen to his subordinate. Indeed, when he heard the sound of blood spurting, Wang Sheng was already standing there, looking at him coldly. As for the subordinate from before, blood spurted out of his neck, and he slowly fell to the ground. How did this happen? Even now, Xia Feihong still could not believe what he was seeing. He suddenly turned to Wang Sheng and asked, "Lord Duke, please let me know before I die." "Duke, you can't possibly have the strength to fight 80 legendary experts one after another. I'll let you know before you die." Wang Sheng did not refuse this time. Instead, he directly explained to Xia Feihong, "The reason why you were defeated was because you stayed here for too long. Life is different from the outside world, so you got a disease that you don't even know about. You think you're very normal, but this disease will actually reduce your peak strength by at least 30%. The reason why you're still alive is because of your amazing cultivation. Otherwise, you would have died long ago." Chapter 1323. Xia Feihong couldn't believe his ears and quickly confirmed with Wang Sheng. "You're saying that because we've been here for too long, we've gotten sick and our strength has decreased by 30%. "That's right." Wang Sheng nodded calmly, as if he hadn't killed the dozens of people just now. "My strength has decreased by at least 30%. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to kill so many of you by myself." It turned out that everyone's strength had decreased because they had gotten sick. that made it easy to explain. If it was a true legendary pinnacle expert, Wang Sheng definitely wouldn't be a match for him. Wang Sheng had also admitted it just now. Right now, Xiao Feihong was feeling much better. Though he knew that he did not have much longer to live, he still felt much better knowing that it was not because his group was inferior to others, nor was it because so many of them were so useless that they could not even defeat one person. I'm also very impressed that you guys were able to persist until the end. Wang Sheng still had a good impression of Xia Feihong at the moment, but it wasn't to the point where he would let Xia Feihong go. If you have any last words, I can bring them back for you. Thank you, Duke. Xia Feihong finally had a smile on his face. Then, he pleaded to Wang Sheng. Duke, can you give me a moment? I want to write a letter. Wang Sheng didn't say anything else. He just extended his hand and made an inviting gesture. Xia Feihong didn't put on any pretense. He directly pulled over the corpses of his two subordinates and used them as a table. He then took out a piece of animal skin and started writing on the spot. As for Wang Sheng, he didn't stay idle either. After a whistle, a group of snow rats rushed forward and searched the corpses on the ground. In a short while, a large pile of storage rings was sent to Wang Sheng. In addition, the weapons used by those experts were also piled up near Wang Sheng. Xia Feihong saw all this but didn't say anything. What was the point of thinking about those things when he was already dead? His hands moved quickly. In a short while, he finished writing a letter. After he finished writing, he wasn't afraid that Wang Sheng would read it. He just casually rolled it up and handed it to Wang Sheng. Duke, please enlighten me. Xia Feihong seemed to have let go of all the worries in his heart. He no longer had any worries, and he had regained his pride as a legendary expert. He unsheathed his sword and took a stance at Wang Sheng. Even if he died, he wanted to die like his subordinates, facing the enemy head-on. Please. Wang Sheng didn't try to be pretentious. He held the Tiger Fong military knife and called out to Xia Feihong. The two silhouettes collided in an instant, and then suddenly separated. Then, they collided again and separated again. After a few times, the two figures finally stopped moving. After a while, a figure's knees went soft, and he knelt on the snowy ground. Duke, even if I'm not sick, I'm afraid I'm still no match for you. The limp Xia Feihong finally surrendered completely. His mouth was full of blood, and his hand was clutching his ribs, which were also gushing with blood. He struggled to say those words, but he could no longer hold on and fell forward. All the forces of the Xia family in the grounds of 1,000 extremities had been uprooted by Wang Sheng. Not a single one was left. Phew! Wang Sheng let out a long sigh and shook his head as he looked at the corpses all over the ground. After whistling once more, all the demonic beasts swarmed forward. They either shared a corpse or devoured it one at a time. In any case, there weren't any corpses left on the ground. After a while, all the corpses were buried in the stomachs of the demonic beasts. Wang Sheng scanned through Xia Feihong's letter in a hurry. He didn't write much. He only wrote that the camp had been attacked by Wang Sheng alone. Because everyone had contracted an unknown disease, they all died in a one-on-one battle with Wang Sheng. He only stated the facts. He didn't complain, nor did he ask for anyone to avenge them. He was probably afraid that Wang Sheng wouldn't help after reading the letter. After putting away the letter, Wang Sheng whistled again and commanded a group of snow rats and snow foxes to rush into the underground tunnel. The giant bear and giant tiger stayed outside to guard. The Xiao family had been digging here for more than a year and a half. No matter what, they should have found something, right? Wang Sheng planned to go in and take a look to see what the Xia family had discovered. They entered through this alternate tunnel. After going down several dozen feet, they passed through the layer of ice. However, it didn't go underground. Instead, at the boundary between the ground and the layer of ice, the Xia family began to dig horizontally. Looking at the scene along the way, it seemed like the Xia family was smarter than the Shi family and the Gan family. They didn't dig underground. However, Wang Sheng couldn't help but shake his head along the way. They were all the same. Even if they were digging underground, it was impossible to accurately determine the specific location. They could only rely on luck to dig in a large area. It was really difficult to find their target. Perhaps the map left behind by the ancestors was very detailed. However, once the map with a radius of several hundred miles was condensed into a small map with a radius of less than 3 feet, any circle that would be several miles in radius. In addition, the original terrain had been completely covered in ice. Other than the location of the formation, there were no other signs on the ground that could be used to determine the location. Even if the ancestors who had drawn a map came here now, they might not be able to find the location that they had marked with their own hands. The underground tunnel was pitch black. Wang Xing didn't light a torch. Instead, he used the flashlight of the individual soldier combat terminal to illuminate the way. He walked along the tunnel. After walking for a long distance, Wang Xing estimated that they were almost 10 miles away. Judging by the direction they were heading in, the winding passageway should be nearing the magic array that was binding the Super Yao beast. Suddenly, Wang Xing caught sight of a house. To be exact, it was a small thatched house. Most of the roof was still frozen in ice. However, the inside of the house had been dug out and cleaned. Wang Xing looked around. It was an ordinary room. It should be a farmer's room. There are also a few farming tools inside. Who had built this? As he walked along the tunnel, the area before him seemed to open up. After walking for a short while, Wang Xing realized that this place should have been a small village. However, it was now completely buried under ice. The experts from the Xia family had found this small village during their excavation. They had dug out the entire village bit by bit. What was this? Could it be that something good would be hidden in a village? Wang Xing shook his head. It seemed that the Xia family wanted to find a bigger target from this village. This small village was at most a subsidiary village of the Lin family's territory. The real Lin family manor or city should not be far away. However, he didn't know which direction it was. It seemed that there should be a road outside the village. Perhaps he could dig along the road and find the direction he was looking for. Wang Xing carefully searched the area and quickly found the traces of the road left behind in the past. The Xia family had also dug a tunnel along the road. It seemed that everyone had the same idea. Chapter 1324. After carefully sensing, there was no human aura in this passage, and the snow rats that had already rushed in ahead did not send a warning signal. Wang Xing boldly followed this road and walked forward. The road was long, and there seemed to be nothing around. The Xia family probably did not intend to dig around to see what was on the side of the road. They just dug all the way along a narrow path. Wang Xing walked along the road for a while and realized that something was wrong. He took the hammer and chisel that the old Taoist had specially made for him and began to dig on both sides of the passage. It did not take long for him to dig more than 10 feet diagonally. As Wang Xing expected, on both sides of this road, there was clearly a piece of farmland. No wonder the further he went, the thinner the trail became, and the more it looked like a path stepped on the ridge. It turned out to be a road to the farmland. The grain that was planted in the past had grown to half a person's height, and now it had all been frozen in the ice. This obviously could not be the road to the Lin family's manor or the city, so Wang Xing did not intend to continue forward. He just controlled a few snow rats to quickly explore the passage. It did not take long for the snow rats to return. There was no road ahead. After a little calculation, there was about 200 meters of passage ahead. The Xia family masters probably also found that this road was blocked, so they gave up. Returning to the small village, Wang Xing went forward along another passage. This passage was not a road. Judging from the direction, it should be through the excavated passage at the side of the igloo. Sure enough, after walking a few hundred steps forward, Wang Xing saw a collapsed passage. The other end of the passage was still open, so Wang Xing simply walked forward for a while. This side seemed a little messy, and there was no direction. It was probably those masters who dug randomly by luck. It was also the luck of the Xia family masters to be able to find the village. Of course, it could not be ruled out that they were only digging on the ground and not going deep underground. At least in this regard, they were a little luckier than the Shi family and the Gan family. Following this main passage, Wang Xing explored several branching passages one after another. It took Wang Xing nearly a day's time. Unfortunately, the path in this direction was the longest. It was dozens of miles long and led to many different directions. However, no substantial content was found. If they wanted to dig out the entire passageway and the small village, the dozens of experts from the Xia family would have to spend at least half a year. If you were to take into account the time needed to build the igloo and set up the guards, it would probably take another half a year. Not to mention, the ice that was dug out could not be stored on the spot. It could only be transported outside. The time needed to transport it back and forth would probably take more than a year. One had to know that not everyone could maintain the high enthusiasm they had at the beginning. A few months or even a year without any results, even a legendary expert would be annoyed. Moreover, they had also contracted scurvy. Their bodies were getting weaker day by day, so it was normal for them to slow down. What was the Xia family looking for? Wang Xing thought about it and returned to the village. In one of the houses, he organized all the storage rings that the Xia family had obtained. It did not take long for Wang Xing to find a map. Looking at the bee skin that was about 3 feet in circumference, Wang Xing was speechless. He did not know what to say. It was a so-called treasure map that could not be any simpler. Each and every one of them seemed to be the mark of an array. The last obvious location of the treasure was marked with red paint that might have been blood. However, it was a large circle that was thicker than Wang Xing's finger. This circle, if placed in reality, would definitely be more than 20 miles in circumference. Was this a treasure map? Was it a game of hide and seek? Relying on this circle to find what they wanted in this area? Dream on. There was only this map. As for what the map was about, Wang Xing did not find any explanation. Thinking about it, how could the things recorded in the ancestral records of the Xia family be casually carried by the experts who came out to look for it? Just this map was enough. Xia Feihong definitely knew what they were looking for, but he did not have the opportunity to say it. Even this map was copied later and not the original. There were several other paths in the village that were dug along the traces of the road. Wang Xing continued to walk in several other directions for a while, but all of them were long or short, and he gave up halfway. Or rather, it could not be said that they gave up halfway. They had finally found some clues and were planning to dig along several paths. But in the end, Wang Xing killed his way to their door and cut off all their hopes. It could be said that in the past 1.5 years, the Xia family had not found anything more valuable than this village. More than 80 legendary realm experts had been living underground as rats for more than a year. They had even contracted scurvy, but they had only managed to fight for this opportunity. Perhaps when they dug to the village, they were extremely excited because they had found a village and could follow the road to find the real goal. Unfortunately, they had already contracted a serious disease at that time. Even if Wang Xing didn't come, in another half a year or so at most, these people would die without Wang Xing needing to do anything. This was based on the fact that they were legendary realm experts with profound cultivation and could rely on their strong cultivation to resist the invasion of a part of the disease. If it were an ordinary person, they would probably die in 2 months at most. Perhaps they would have a chance to leave midway, and the outside world would send people to take turns. Unfortunately, there was no more possibility now. Coming out of the tunnel dug by the Xia family, Wang Xing sighed silently in his heart. He did not know what it was for, but he had to give up his life here. Was it really worth it? Other than the peerless books and treasures in the Lin family's collection, what else was there that the 8 great families were searching for so painstakingly 500 years later? Wang Xing did not know the answer, but Wang Xing knew that no matter what they wanted to dig, Wang Xing would help them. He just did not know what kind of expression they would have when the time came to face it. Since Xia Feihong had written a suicide letter, Wang Xing had no intention of hiding it. Dealing with the Xia family was Wang Xing's revenge. How could he not let the main family know what kind of stupid things he had done and what kind of price he had paid for his revenge? Half a month later, the Xia family's camp in the Land of Thousand Despair was facing a formidable enemy. The camp, which had been rebuilt after the attack by the Land of Mountains, was surrounded by an army of man-eating ants. Everyone inside was on the verge of breaking down. Who didn't know about the grudge between Wang Xing and the Xia family? with an army of man-eating ants surrounding the Xia family's camp. How could they leave anyone alive? To everyone's surprise, Wang Sheng did not kill them all. Instead, he appeared at the entrance of the Xia family's camp. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Wang Sheng took out a roll of animal hide and placed it at the entrance of the Xia family's camp. Then, he disappeared with the man-eating ant army. The trembling Xia family leader personally went out to get the animal hide. When he opened it, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted on the spot. Chapter 1325. The experts in the Xia family's campsite were shocked. A group of people hurriedly carried the chief back. One of them was smart enough to take the beast hide scroll from the chief's hands. After reading it, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He stood rooted to the ground, unable to move. This was Elder Xia Feihong's final letter. Elder Xia was a legendary pinnacle expert. He had led hundreds of Xia family experts into the core region of the grounds of Thousand Despair. The experts in the Xia family's campsite more or less knew about this. They had been cultivating and improving themselves here, waiting for the day they could enter the core region to reinforce Elder Xia Feihong. However, Elder Xia Feihong's final letter had been sent back. Not only that, all the experts from the Xia family who were in the core region of the grounds of Thousand Despair had been killed by Wang Sheng alone. How? How is this possible? Aside from the 14 legendary experts who had been killed while exploring the core region of the grounds of Thousand Despair, the remaining 86 legendary experts from the Xia family had been killed by Wang Sheng alone. The entire Xia family's campsite fell into a deathly silence. Reality was too cruel. The Xia family's hopes of becoming the #1 family in the world in the grounds of Thousand Despair had been dashed to smithereens. Not only that, the Xia family had lost the right to compete in the grounds of Thousand Despair after losing 100 legendary experts. Why? Why did Wang Sheng have to be so ruthless? Everyone wanted to shout this in their hearts, but no one could shout it out. The reason was all too clear. The Xia family had tried to kill Wang Sheng when he left the capital. Furthermore, the Xia family had made their move when the other families had stopped in time. If they had been in Wang Sheng's shoes, they would have done the same. Wang Sheng had already been merciful by not killing everyone in the campsite. Otherwise, how many people would he need to deliver the letter? 1, 2 at most would be enough, right? The chief of the Xia family's campsite finally regained consciousness after being unconscious for an hour. However, now that he had regained consciousness, he would rather have remained unconscious. At least that would make him feel better. Send a letter to the patriarch immediately. The first thing the chief did after waking up was to get someone to quickly send Xia Feihong's letter back to Xia country and let the patriarch know. The Xia family had to take this matter seriously. If there was one thing that the members of the Xia family were glad about, it would be the news that Xia Feihong had received from Wang Sheng before he died. It wasn't that they were weaker than others, but that they had been stuck in the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair for too long, causing them to contract a disease that they were unaware of. Currently, apart from Wang Sheng, only the Xia family knew about this matter. Perhaps they could use this matter to make a fuss. It only took half a day for Xia Feihong's letter to be delivered from the Xia family's camp to Duke Xia via a messenger bird. Duke Xiao's reaction was exactly the same as that of the camp manager. After a quick glance, he vomited blood on the spot. The elders and ministers of the Xia kingdom were urgently summoned to the palace to discuss matters. After everyone read Xia Feihong's personal letter, they all fell silent. It's Feihong's handwriting. One of the elders had a terrible look on his face. His voice was twitching as he spoke. The markings on it are correct, too. I'm afraid that the people inside are all ready. Another elder sighed and closed his eyes. 2 drops of tears flowed down his cheeks silently. This elder wasn't the only one who was crying. More than half of the elders felt the same way. They were the elites among the elites of the Xia family. It could be said that they were more than half of the Xia family's assets a year ago. Just like that, all of them were stuffed in, and not even a sound was heard before they were all wiped out. Moreover, many of the elders' close family members had died inside. How could they not cry? It was a mistake. Duke Xia closed his eyes and sighed. It was a long sigh, but it sounded more like he was crying. The others weren't any better. They all looked as if they had lost their parents. What do we do now? The great elder's eyes were also filled with sorrow. However, he knew that it was meaningless to be sad. What was important was how the Xia kingdom would deal with this. That was the real issue that concerned the survival of the Xia kingdom. Ever since the attack on Wangsheng outside the capital, the demoness of Lizhen Lane had gone crazy. She had actually placed a bounty of 1 billion gold coins for the head of any expert in the Xia kingdom. It was 5 times the market price. Just this alone caused the entire Xia country to be in a state of panic and jittery. Now, as long as an expert in the Xia kingdom revealed their identity, they wouldn't dare to stay anywhere other than the land of 1,000 despair and the Xia kingdom itself. Who knew how many open spears and covert arrows would be directed at them? They had to sleep with one eye open. Otherwise, they wouldn't even know when they lost their heads. The Xia kingdom had never been so cowardly before. All of this stemmed from their scheme against Wangsheng. The entire Xia kingdom couldn't figure out why the Gan family had tried to kill Wangsheng. They had even sent over 40 experts to kill Wangsheng. In the end, Wangsheng had only accepted 400 million gold coins. When it came to the Xia kingdom, only one expert had made a move. In exchange, the core experts of a land of 1,000 despair were all killed. At least hundreds of experts from the Xia family had lost their heads. This was only the result of Wangsheng's attack. With such a good opportunity, how could the other feudal lords, who were eager to destroy the Xia family, just stand by and watch? There were more or less troubles everywhere. The Xia kingdom couldn't do anything right now. The Xia kingdom's only hope was to reap the rewards from the core area of the land of 1,000 despair. The last time Xia Feihong had sent a letter, he had reported that he had found a village. As long as they dug along the road, they would definitely be able to dig to the place they were looking for. However, at this crucial moment, Xia Feihong and the others had all been killed by Wangsheng. It was as if the sky had fallen. Was there anything more speechless than seeing a rainbow after a storm, only to see the sun set and nothing else? This was what the Xia family was facing. Who was to blame? The chief elder of the capital? The moment Wangsheng released the map, they had immediately attacked Wangsheng. This was the agreement between the various families. Who would have thought that a single sentence from Wangsheng would make the other families give up? Was it wrong for the chief elder of the capital to attack Wangsheng in order to protect the interests of the Xia family and the Xia family? The only mistake he had made was probably that he had misjudged Wangsheng's cultivation base. What kind of illness will one get if they stay in the core area of the land of 1,000 despair for a long time? Finally, the great elder spoke again. After reading Xia Feihong's letter over and over again, he finally found the crux of the matter. Everyone was stunned. How did they know? No one had been to the core area of the land of 1,000 despair. Even if they had been there, they wouldn't have known. The other families probably don't know about this yet, right? The great elder immediately realized that there was a way out of the desperate situation the Xia family was in. Chapter 1326. Those who could become the elders and ministers of a feudal family were not easy to deal with. They immediately thought of the key point. The calamity that the Xia clan had already experienced would probably be experienced by all the other clans as well. Now it all depended on whether Wangsheng had released the news or not. It is said that if you stay in the core of the place of despair for a long time, you will get a strange disease because the concentration of spiritual energy is greatly reduced when you return to the outside. An elder quickly answered the first question of the great elder. Duke Changsheng said that it is called decompression sickness. This matter was not widely spread at that time, but the other families still bought the news from the Shi family and the Gan family. Anyway, it was just a piece of news. The price was not cheap, but as long as it was related to the core of the place of despair, it was worth it. I don't think Duke Changsheng has released the news. This time, it was Duke Xia who replied. It is most beneficial for Duke Changsheng that the other families don't know about it. Then we will use this news to exchange for a period of time for the other families to not do anything. The first elder made a prompt decision and immediately made a decision. Before Duke Changsheng can react, let's get it done immediately. What about Duke Changsheng? Duke Xia's eyes lit up, and he immediately asked. If they want to know about the disease, they will have to ask Duke Changsheng. The great elder hesitated for a moment and said in an uncertain tone, maybe Duke Changsheng can make a lot of money. Maybe the great elder became more and more hesitant as he spoke. With Wang Sheng's current wealth, would he still care about the gold coins of the other families? This was also the reason why he was not sure. As long as the other families do not do anything for a period of time, we will have a chance to recover. Duke Xia was indeed the Duke of Xia. He also realized this problem, but he immediately made a decision. The less pressure he faced, the better. Wasn't that how things were supposed to be done? One by one, one by one. Won't we tell the other families that something has happened inside? An elder asked doubtfully, but he immediately realized that he had asked a stupid question. If they did not say it, wouldn't Wang Sheng say it? We are not afraid of them knowing. This time, the great elder was very certain. Our Xia family members all died inside. Which one of them could feel at ease? We can't be the only one to be worried, right? They were all smart people and immediately understood the great elder's words. If the Xia family was completely wiped out, it meant that none of them would be able to live in peace. With such fear, he would probably stand on the opposite side of Wang Sheng. Wasn't it the same for the Lin family 500 years ago? It was precisely because everyone was afraid of him that they banded together to annihilate him. If Wang Sheng incurred the wrath of the public, it would not only be a matter of the Xia family. Let's do it this way. Send a letter to every family immediately. Duke Xia could no longer care about his bleeding wounds and immediately ordered. A moment later, more than a dozen messenger birds took off from the Xia kingdom's palace and flew to various places. It was already the middle of the afternoon when the Xia kingdom held their meeting. By the next morning, all the countries, including the emperor, had received the news from Xia kingdom. That morning, the emperor and the feudal lords were so shocked that they smashed their breakfast utensils. All of this happened after they received the urgent news from Xia kingdom. One person against 86 legendary experts from Xia kingdom, including more than 20 who were at the pinnacle of the legendary realm. Yet, he could not even defeat Wang Sheng in a one-on-one battle. How high was Wang Sheng's level of cultivation? Finally, after reading the rest of the story, he realized that many of the Xia family's experts had been trapped in the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair for a long period of time. They had contracted a strange illness that no one except Wang Sheng knew about. This had caused their powers to plummet, and Wang Sheng had single-handedly solved the problem. At this point, everyone finally understood. At this point, someone suddenly realized why Wang Sheng and the old Taoist Ling Su would never come out of the core of the land of Thousand Despair for more than 3 months. It turned out that after 3 months, the strange disease that no one knew about would come knocking on their door. So that was it. What a sinister Wang Sheng. He did not even mention it. So this was what he had in mind. Instantly, everyone in the family became anxious. Fortunately, the people that they had sent in had only been in there for 2 months. It was less than 3 months. There was still time. However, the Sure family became the most anxious. This was because their experts had been in there for more than 8 months. The strange disease must have found its way to those experts in there during these 8 months. If it was someone else, no one would have believed it. However, High Duke Xia had made a solemn vow and used this news to exchange for a year's time to not attack Xia Kingdom. One could imagine the weight of this. Out of curiosity, everyone nodded their heads. Then, they received accurate news. It was impossible for it to be fake. If the Xia family wanted to trick everyone in this matter, the Xia family would not want to live anymore. Among the 8 super clans, at least 5 of them were secretly glad that they did not let their own people attack outside the city. Otherwise, the fate of the people from the Xia family in the land of Thousand Despair would have befallen them. Thank goodness. At the critical moment, the capital city master did not let his men attack. He had saved many lives in the family. The clan heads of the 5 clans wished that they could give the manager of their clan in the capital a big kiss and then give him a big reward. As for the Sure family and the Gan family, they were no longer surprised. They were the only ones who had seen Wang Sheng's immense advantage in the core of the ground of thousand extremities. Making a move on Wang Sheng when there were still members of their own clan in the core of the ground of thousand extremities, and when there were still members of their own clan in the core of the ground of thousand extremities, wouldn't that be asking for their own benefits? That day, when the masters of the families were discussing how to make a move on Wang Sheng, the Sure family and the Gan family agreed to it. However, they used the excuse that their experts did not arrive in time. From the looks of it now, he had done Wang Sheng a huge favor. The master of the Sure family was wondering if he should visit Princess Yongning at Duke Chongqing's residence to see if the Duke had a solution to the strange disease. The Sure family, the Gan family, the Tang family, and the Song family had the same idea. Even the emperor wanted to know the answer. All the families had the same idea. So the previous scene happened again. After the leaders of each family paid their respects to the emperor, Steward Zhou came to Duke Chongqing's residence with a respectful attitude to pay his respects to Princess Yongning. You want to know the solution? Mayer looked at Steward Zhou and asked in surprise, "You are willing to pay a high price?" "That's right, Your Highness." Steward Zhou replied with a smile. "As long as you say the price, they will give it to you immediately. There is no bargaining." "Forget it." Mayer was in a good mood after hearing about Wang Sheng. Hearing this, she lost interest and ignored him. "I promised not to do this kind of business. I'm happy this time. I'll teach you for free." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.